My name is Amy Palmer. I'm 28 years old, and if you walked into my Thamesview penthouse right now, you'd think I had it all figured out. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, minimalist Scandinavian furniture that cost more than most people's cars, a wine collection I started just because I could. On my desk sits a nameplate that reads, Senior Investment Analyst, Goldman Sachs London. My closet holds more Alexander McQueen than any reasonable person needs. By every measure society uses to define success, I've made it. But here's what you won't find anywhere in my 2-bedroom luxury flat: a single photograph of my family. Not one. People notice eventually. Colleagues who come over for dinner parties, friends I've made through work, even the woman who cleans my apartment twice a week. They see photos of me at university graduation, pictures from holidays in Santorini and Barcelona, a framed shot of me and my fiancé Daniel on the day he proposed on a beach in Scotland. But no childhood photos. No parents beaming at a gap-toothed little girl. No awkward teenage years documented with embarrassing haircuts and braces. Nothing. When people ask, and they always do, usually after their second glass of wine when social filters start to slip, I've perfected my response. I smile softly, just sad enough to discourage follow-up questions, and say, I'm essentially an orphan. It's easier not to keep reminders around. That usually does it. People mumble apologies, change the subject, feel terribly sophisticated for not prying. They assume car accident may be cancer, something tragic but clean. A story with a beginning, middle, and merciful end. They never imagine the truth. The truth is my parents are alive and well, living in a 2-bedroom flat in Croydon with my older brother. My father, Richard Palmer, still holds the title of Professor Emeritus at Cambridge, though he took early retirement 3 years ago. My mother, Victoria Palmer, occasionally lectures on Victorian literature at community colleges, a significant step down from her former position, but still respectable enough to put on Christmas cards. My brother Oliver works as a solicitor at a mid-tier firm in Canary Wharf, not quite the illustrious barrister career he'd planned, but decent. They're alive. They're fine. And I haven't spoken to any of them in 7 years. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable when I eventually tell them the real story. I don't miss them. Not even a little bit. I don't wonder what they're doing on holidays. I don't feel a pang of guilt when I see Father's Day cards in shops. I don't have complicated feelings about it. I simply don't care. But I didn't start out this way. I wasn't born with this particular brand of cold indifference. It was carefully cultivated over 21 years of systematic emotional neglect, financial exploitation, and psychological manipulation, so subtle that I didn't even recognize it as abuse until I was old enough to escape. This is the story of how I lost my family. Or more accurately, how I realized I never really had one to begin with. People always assume that if you come from money, you must have had an easy childhood. They imagine trust fund babies who summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen, whose biggest problems involve which luxury car to drive to their private school. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes money does buy happiness, or at least a very comfortable approximation of it. But sometimes, more often than you'd think, money just makes the dysfunction more complicated. My story starts with my grandmother, Vivienne Palmer, though I didn't understand her significance until much later. Grandmother Vivienne was what people in the 1970s called a force of nature. A fashion designer who built Palmer Atelier from absolutely nothing into one of London's most sought-after couture houses. She designed wedding dresses for minor royalty, evening gowns for actresses whose names you'd recognize, bespoke suits for wealthy businesswomen who wanted to look powerful without looking masculine. She was brilliant, demanding, uncompromising, and according to my mother, absolutely impossible to live with. I don't remember much about the early years before grandmother entered my life properly. I know we lived in Cambridge in a lovely Edwardian house near the university where both my parents taught. Father specialized in moral philosophy, ironic, given what came later, and mother was considered one of the foremost scholars on Victorian women's literature. They were the kind of academic couple who hosted dinner parties where everyone discussed Foucault and drank too much wine and felt terribly intellectual. My brother Oliver was born when mother was 31, after years of trying and 2 miscarriages that I only learned about from overheard conversations. He was, from the moment he drew breath, the miracle child, the golden boy, the one who would carry on the Palmer intellectual legacy. I came along 5 years later, unplanned and I suspect now not particularly wanted, But I was here, so they made the best of it. My earliest clear memory is of being 6 years old, sitting in our Cambridge kitchen while Mother made breakfast. Oliver was already at the table, 11 years old, reading the newspaper like a tiny adult. Father was quizzing him on Latin vocabulary. I was coloring, trying to stay quiet, trying not to interrupt the important business of educating the genius child. "Amy," Mother said, not looking at me, "stop dragging your crayon like that. You're making an awful noise." I hadn't noticed I was making noise, but I immediately froze, crayon suspended in midair. "She has no sense of her impact on others," Father observed to Mother, as if I wasn't sitting right there. "We'll need to work on that." Oliver glanced at me with the particular brand of disdain only an 11-year-old can muster for a 6-year-old sister. "She's always making noise. Yesterday she was singing in the hallway and I couldn't concentrate on my maths." "I was singing quietly," I said, my voice small. "There's no such thing as singing quietly," Mother replied. "Either one sings properly or one doesn't sing at all. Now finish your breakfast and go play outside. Your father and I need to discuss Oliver's entrance exams." I took my toast and went into the garden, where I ate alone on the swing set Father had installed 2 years earlier. Even at 6, I understood that Oliver's entrance exams to Harrow were more important than whether I'd eaten breakfast at the table or in the garden. That was just how things were. But then everything changed the summer I turned 6, when Grandmother Vivienne invited me to spend a weekend at her house in Kensington. I'd met Grandmother before, of course, at Christmas and occasional Sunday lunches that always felt stiff and uncomfortable. She was tall and elegant, with silver hair she wore in an immaculate chignon and the kind of posture that made everyone else in the room suddenly aware they were slouching. She wore her own designs exclusively, beautiful tailored pieces in jewel tones that made her look like she'd stepped out of a 1960s fashion magazine. Mother was always tense around her. I noticed that even at 6, the way Mother's voice got higher, more strained, the way she constantly adjusted her clothing and hair as if trying to meet some impossible standard, the way Grandmother's eyes would sweep over Mother with barely concealed disappointment before moving on to something more interesting. Usually me. "The child has good bone structure," Grandmother said at one of those lunches, studying my face like I was a sculpture she was considering purchasing. "And look at those hands. Long fingers, she could have been a pianist." "We're not pushing music on her," Mother said quickly. "We believe children should develop at their own pace." "How modern of you," Grandmother replied, her tone suggesting modern was not a compliment. "And how has that worked with Oliver? Has he developed into anything interesting at his own pace?" The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Father cleared his throat. "Oliver is exceptionally gifted academically. He's reading at a year 11 level already." "Reading," Grandmother repeated. "How thrilling. Victoria, you've raised a boy who can decode words on a page, truly your finest achievement." I didn't understand the insult then, but I felt the tension. Mother's hand tightened on her wine glass, Father's jaw clenched, Oliver stared at his plate, and Grandmother just smiled and turned to me. "Amy, darling, how would you like to spend next weekend at my house? We could visit the Victoria and Albert Museum. Have you ever been?" I shook my head. "Well then, it's settled. Victoria, I'll collect her Friday after school." It wasn't a question. It was a declaration. Mother looked like she wanted to refuse, but Father put a hand on her arm. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Finally, Mother nodded tightly. "That would be lovely. Thank you, Vivienne." But her voice suggested it was anything but lovely. That first weekend at Grandmother's Kensington house changed my life, though I didn't know it yet. The house itself was like something from a fairy tale, a 4-story Victorian terrace with a glossy black door and window boxes overflowing with flowers. Inside, everything was beautiful. Not the way our Cambridge house was beautiful, with its careful academic neutrality and beige walls. This was bold, deliberate beauty. Jewel-toned walls, antique furniture mixed with modern art, bookshelves stuffed with fashion magazines and design books instead of academic journals. And the light. God, the light. Every room seemed to glow. Grandmother showed me to my room on the 3rd floor, a bedroom she'd prepared specifically for my visits, decorated in shades of cream and gold with a 4-poster bed that made me feel like a princess. The walls were bare except for one large mirror. "I left the walls empty," she explained, "because I thought you might like to decorate them yourself. Would you like to paint?" "Paint," I repeated, not understanding. "Create pictures, make art, express yourself." She opened a wardrobe to reveal shelves of art supplies, watercolors, acrylics, colored pencils, sketch pads. "Your mother told me you like to draw." I did like to draw, though I'd never thought of it as particularly important. It was just something I did when Oliver was studying and Mother and Father were busy. A way to be quiet and not bother anyone. We could paint together this weekend, Grandmother continued. I'll show you some techniques, and tomorrow we'll go to the V&A and look at the fashion collection. I want you to see what beauty looks like when someone truly commits to it. I nodded, overwhelmed and delighted and slightly terrified all at once. That weekend, Grandmother taught me how to mix watercolors to get the exact shade of blue I wanted. She showed me how to look at fabric and understand the weight and drape of it. She took me to the museum and walked me through centuries of fashion history, explaining why certain silhouettes worked and others didn't, how designers used color to create emotion, how clothing could be architecture and art and self-expression all at once. She talked to me like I was intelligent, like my thoughts mattered. Like I was a person, not just a small inconvenience who needed to be quiet while the important people had important conversations. When Father collected me Sunday evening, I didn't want to leave. Did you thank your grandmother? He asked as we drove back to Cambridge. Yes, I said, clutching a sketch pad Grandmother had given me. Can I go back next weekend? We'll see. Which is what adults say when they mean no but don't want to deal with a child's disappointment right now. But Grandmother had other ideas. The weekends at Kensington became regular. Once a month at first, then twice a month, then nearly every weekend by the time I was 7. Mother clearly hated it but couldn't find a good enough reason to refuse. Father seemed indifferent as long as it didn't interfere with Oliver's schedule, and Oliver was relieved to have me out of the house. Those weekends were everything. Grandmother taught me about color theory and design principles. She let me help in her studio, organizing fabric swatches and sketching ideas. She told me stories about her early days in fashion, the risks she took, the people who told her she'd fail. Your mother never understood it, she said once, as we sat in her studio on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I was 8 by then, carefully copying a fashion illustration from one of her old design books. Victoria wanted safety, academic respectability. A life where every outcome could be predicted and controlled. She could never understand why anyone would choose a creative life, where success is never guaranteed and failure is always one collection away. Is Mother disappointed in you? I asked, not quite understanding the dynamics but sensing something important. Grandmother laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Oh, darling, your mother has been disappointed in me since she was old enough to understand that I wasn't like other mothers. I missed school plays because I was showing a collection in Paris. I forgot birthdays because I was drowning in orders. I prioritized my work over her piano recitals and debate competitions. I was a terrible mother by conventional standards. She set down her teacup and looked at me directly. But I was an excellent designer. I built something from nothing. I created beauty and employed hundreds of people and made women feel powerful in my clothes. Does that excuse my failures as a mother? No, but it does mean my life had meaning beyond raising a child who resented me. I didn't fully understand what she was saying. I just knew that Grandmother was the only adult who seemed to see me as something other than Oliver's little sister or an inconvenient second child. You have it too, she continued, gesturing at my sketch. That eye for beauty, that need to create something that didn't exist before. Your mother doesn't have it. Oliver certainly doesn't. But you do, Amy. And I want you to remember that whatever happens. What do you mean, whatever happens? She smiled and changed the subject, asking me about school and friends. But I remember feeling a chill, like she was trying to tell me something important that I was too young to decode. 6 months later, Grandmother Vivienne collapsed in her studio from a massive stroke. She died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. She was 72 years old. I was 8. And my real nightmare was about to begin. I remember very little about the funeral. I know it was at a church in Kensington, filled with people I didn't know, designers and models and society women who wept elegantly into handkerchiefs. I wore a black dress Mother had bought specifically for the occasion. Oliver wore a suit and kept tugging at the collar. Father looked stoic and philosophical. Mother looked relieved. I remember noticing that and feeling confused by it. I cried, but quietly, because crying loudly would have been inappropriate. After the service, we went to a law office in Mayfair. I didn't understand why at the time. I was 8 and exhausted and wanted to go home and cry properly in private, but Father said we needed to be there for the reading of the will. The lawyer was an older man named Bernard Ashworth, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. His office smelled like old books and furniture polish. He sat us all down, Mother, Father, Oliver, and me, and opened a leather folder. I'll get straight to the point, he said. Vivienne Palmer's estate is substantial. She had several significant assets. The property at 28 Thornbury Road in Kensington, currently valued at approximately £4.2 million. An investment portfolio worth approximately £3.8 million. And ongoing royalty agreements from the sale of Palmer Atelier, which generate approximately £200,000 annually. I saw mother and father exchange a look. Oliver sat up straighter. Mr. Ashworth continued, Vivienne left very specific instructions regarding the distribution of her estate. He paused, glancing at me with something like sympathy. The entirety of the estate, the house, the investments, and the royalty rights are to be placed in a trust fund for Amy Catherine Palmer, to be administered by her parents until she reaches the age of 21. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then mother laughed, a strange, high-pitched sound. I'm sorry, what? Your daughter is the sole beneficiary, Mr. Ashworth repeated patiently. The trust will be managed by you and Richard as co-trustees until Amy's 21st birthday, at which point she will assume full control of all assets. What about me? Oliver asked, his voice cracking slightly. What did grandmother leave for me? Mr. Ashworth looked down at his papers. A letter, that's all. Would you like me to? No, Oliver said quickly, face flushing red. He stood up. This is ridiculous. I don't want her stupid letter. He walked out. I heard his footsteps echoing in the hallway outside, getting faster, almost running. Father cleared his throat. Bernard, surely there's been some mistake. Vivienne wouldn't have. There's no mistake, Mr. Ashworth said firmly. Vivienne was quite clear about her intentions. She updated this will 6 months before her death. She was of sound mind and body. Everything was properly witnessed and notarized. He turned to me. Amy, your grandmother wanted you to have this house and this money because she believed in your potential. She left instructions that the trustees, your parents, may use the annual investment returns and royalty income for your care, education, and welfare, but the principal amount must remain intact until you're 21. They're required to maintain transparent records and submit to an annual audit. Do you understand? I nodded, though I understood almost nothing. I was 8. I knew £4 million was a lot, but I couldn't comprehend what it actually meant. I just knew everyone was looking at me strangely. This is insane, Mother said quietly. Mother was clearly not in her right mind if she thought an 8-year-old child should inherit everything while her own daughter gets nothing. Victoria, Mr. Ashworth said, and his voice was gentle but firm, Vivienne left you a letter as well. Would you like to read it privately, or should I? I don't need to read it, Mother snapped. I know exactly what it says, that I disappointed her, that I chose the wrong life, that I wasn't creative or bold or whatever other quality she valued more than basic motherhood. She grabbed her handbag and stood. Come on, Amy, we're leaving. I followed her out of the office, trying to process what had just happened. Father stayed behind to speak with Mr. Ashworth privately. In the car, Mother stared straight ahead, hands clenched on the steering wheel, not starting the engine. Mother, I said quietly. Not now, Amy. We sat in silence for 15 minutes until Father came out and got in the passenger seat. They had a whispered conversation I couldn't quite hear, but I caught fragments. Can't contest it, the will is airtight. What are we supposed to do with? The house alone is worth. Annual returns should cover. Finally, Father turned around to look at me. Amy, your grandmother left you a very generous inheritance. Your mother and I will manage it carefully until you're old enough to handle it yourself. We'll be moving into the Kensington house too, to properly maintain your asset. Do you understand? I nodded. Good girl, he said, and turned back around. Nobody asked me if I wanted to move. Nobody asked me how I felt about grandmother dying. Nobody acknowledged that I'd just lost the one person who made me feel like I mattered. They just saw £8 million and a house in one of London's most expensive neighborhoods. And looking back now, I realize that was the exact moment I stopped being their daughter and became their asset. We moved to the Kensington house 6 weeks after the funeral. I should have been excited. I loved that house. It was full of grandmother's presents, her beautiful things, her studio still set up exactly as she'd left it. My bedroom, the cream and gold room she'd decorated for me, was waiting. But when we arrived with all our belongings, Mother made an announcement. Oliver will take the third-floor bedroom with the south-facing windows, she said, directing the movers. It has the best light for studying. Amy, you'll take the smaller room on the 4th floor. I stared at her. The 4th floor had been the servants' quarters back when the house was first built. Small rooms with slanted ceilings and tiny windows. Dark, cramped. But grandmother made the cream room for me, I said. The cream room is significantly larger, Father explained, as if speaking to someone very slow. Oliver needs space for his books and study materials. He's preparing for Harrow entrance exams. You're 8. You don't need that much space. Besides, Mother added, not looking at me, this is technically your house. You should be happy to accommodate your brother's needs. It's the least you can do. The least I could do. I would hear variations of that phrase for the next 13 years. Oliver got my grandmother's room, my room, with its perfect light and beautiful proportions and walls I'd been planning to decorate with my drawings. I got a converted servant's bedroom with space for a single bed, a small dresser, and almost nothing else. When I tried to hang some of my sketches on the walls, Mother took them down. Don't make holes in the walls, Amy. This is a valuable property. We need to maintain it properly. But Oliver was allowed to install floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in his room, which absolutely required drilling into the walls. The message was clear. This might legally be my house, but I was a guest in it. Oliver was family. That first year in Kensington was disorienting. I started at the local primary school, a perfectly good state school, but notably not the private school Oliver attended. When I asked why I couldn't go to a private school too, Father explained that the trust fund's annual returns needed to be allocated efficiently. Oliver's education is an investment, he said. He's exceptionally gifted. He needs the best possible foundation. You're doing fine at your state school. Not everyone needs the same resources. I was 9 years old. I got average marks because no one at home helped me with homework. They were too busy helping Oliver prepare for Harrow. I wasn't exceptionally gifted because no one was cultivating any gifts I might have had. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oliver excelled because he had every advantage. I was average because I had none. And the gap between us grew wider every month. Meanwhile, Mother and Father set about renovating the house. The first renovation happened 3 months after we moved in. They redid the entire ground floor, new floors, new kitchen, new furnishings. Cost, £90,000, charged to property maintenance in the trust fund accounting. We're improving your asset, Father explained when I overheard him on the phone with Mr. Ashworth, who apparently had some concerns. The house needed updating. We're acting as responsible trustees. My small bedroom on the 4th floor, with its peeling wallpaper from the 1990s and radiator that barely worked, was not included in the renovation. When I pointed this out to Mother, she sighed as if I was being terribly demanding. Amy, we can't renovate every room at once. We're prioritizing the common areas because they add value to the property. Your room is perfectly functional. Oliver's room, the cream room with perfect light, got new built-in wardrobes, a custom desk, and fresh paint in a sophisticated gray. Cost, £12,000. Perfectly functional, apparently, meant I was meant to function in as little space and comfort as possible while everyone else enjoyed the house my grandmother left for me. But I was 9. I didn't have the language to articulate what was happening. I just knew that something felt wrong, but every time I questioned it, I was made to feel selfish and ungrateful. The trust fund was generating about £250,000 annually between investment returns and royalty payments. £250,000 every year that was supposed to be for my care, education, and welfare. Want to know how much of that I actually saw? None, not 1 penny. The money went to Oliver's £40,000 annual school fees at Harrow. It went to his private tutors in maths and Latin. It went to the family's household expenses in the house I owned but had the smallest, worst room in. It went to renovations that improved everyone's life except mine. And every time Mr. Ashworth came for his annual audit, stern-faced and asking pointed questions, Father and Mother had receipts and explanations for everything. Amy lives in the house, therefore household expenses benefit her. The renovations maintain and improve her primary asset. Oliver's education is a family investment that ultimately benefits Amy as well. Technically legal, morally bankrupt, but I didn't know the difference yet. I just knew that I lived in a beautiful house that belonged to me but felt nothing like home, surrounded by a family that seemed to resent my very existence, funded by money that my grandmother left for me but that everyone else spent. And I was only 9 years old. It was going to get so much worse. The thing about psychological abuse is that it's not like in the movies. There's no dramatic villain twirling a mustache, no obviously evil moments you can point to and say, there, that's when they crossed the line. It's subtle, incremental. 1,000 tiny cuts that individually seem like nothing, but collectively bleed you dry. By the time I was 10 years old, I'd learned to make myself small, quiet, unobtrusive. I'd learned that my needs were inherently less important than Oliver's. That asking for things made me selfish. That the greatest virtue I could possess was being low maintenance. I'd also learned that Mr. Bernard Ashworth was the only adult who seemed even remotely concerned about me. He came every October for the annual trust fund audit, arriving at the Kensington house with his leather briefcase and reading glasses, spending 3 hours in Father's study going over receipts and bank statements. I was usually sent to my room during these meetings, but sound carried in the old house. I could hear raised voices through the floorboards. The October I turned 10, I crept halfway down the stairs to listen. "Richard, this is the third major renovation in 2 years," Mr. Ashworth was saying, his usually gentle voice sharp with frustration. "You've spent £150,000 on property improvements. That's more than half the annual returns." "The house is Victorian," Father replied coolly. "It requires significant maintenance. We're preserving Amy's primary asset. Preserving it with a £15,000 Italian marble fireplace in the drawing room?" Mr. Ashworth's papers rustled. "And I see here that Oliver's school fees have increased to £42,000 annually, plus another £8,000 for tutoring and enrichment activities. Meanwhile, Amy is enrolled at the local state primary school, which costs nothing." "Oliver has exceptional needs that require exceptional resources," Mother interjected. "Amy is perfectly happy at her school." "Have you asked her?" Mr. Ashworth challenged. Silence. "I see," he continued. "And this £20,000 family holiday to Tuscany last summer, how exactly did that benefit Amy specifically?" "It was a family bonding experience," Father said stiffly. "Amy was included." "Was she?" "Because according to your photos on social media, Victoria, Amy appears in exactly 3 of 47 pictures, and in all 3 she's in the background while you photograph Oliver at various historical sites." My cheeks burned. I'd hated that holiday. A week of trailing behind while Mother and Father took Oliver to museums and architectural sites, lecturing him on history and culture. I'd spent most of the time reading alone in the villa's garden because I was too young to appreciate the significance of Renaissance art. "Bernard," Father said, and his voice had that dangerous, quiet tone he used when he was truly angry, "you're overstepping your role as executor. We are Amy's parents. We are raising her. We are providing for her needs. The trust explicitly states we may use annual returns for her care, education, and welfare. Everything we've done falls within those parameters." "Technically, yes," Mr. Ashworth agreed. "But Vivienne's intentions?" "Vivienne is dead," Mother said flatly, "and she made the catastrophically poor decision to leave millions to an 8-year-old child while leaving her own daughter nothing. We're doing the best we can with an impossible situation. If you have concerns about our management, you're welcome to petition the courts. Otherwise, I suggest you approve these accounts and let us parent our daughter in peace." More rustling of papers. Then Mr. Ashworth's resigned sigh. "The accounts are technically in order. I'll approve them. But Richard, Victoria, I'm watching closely. And when Amy turns 21, she'll see every penny of how you spent her money. I hope you'll be proud of those decisions." "We'll be fine," Father said coldly. "Will that be all?" I scrambled back up to my room before Mr. Ashworth left, pressing my ear against the door as I heard him descending the stairs. The front door opened, then Mother's voice, syrupy sweet. "Amy, darling, come down, please." My stomach clenched, but I obeyed. Mother and Father waited in the hallway, arms crossed, looking at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Disappointment? Anger? Something else? "Mr. Ashworth would like a word," Mother said, gesturing to where he stood by the door, briefcase in hand. He knelt down to my eye level, something most adults didn't bother doing. "Amy, how are you? Are you happy here?" I glanced at my parents, both watching me intently. "Yes," I said automatically. "Do you have everything you need, for school, for hobbies?" Another glance at Mother, whose jaw was tight. "Yes, sir." Mr. Ashworth studied my face for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "This has my office number and my personal mobile. If you ever need anything at all, you call me." "All right," I took the card, nodding. "Good girl." He stood, shook Father's hand perfunctorily, nodded at Mother, and left. The moment the door closed, Mother snatched the card from my hand. "What did you tell him?" she demanded. "Nothing. He just asked if I was happy and I said yes." "Did you tell him you wanted anything? Did you complain about your room or your school or anything?" "No, I promise I didn't say anything." Father put a hand on Mother's shoulder. "Victoria, she's telling the truth. Bernard is just being difficult. He always had an odd loyalty to your mother." Mother crumpled the business card and tossed it in the hallway bin. That man has no idea what it's like to raise children, no idea the sacrifices we've made, if he thinks we're going to let him poison you against us. I'm not poisoned against you, I said quickly, desperately. I'm grateful for everything, really. The tension eased slightly. Mother's face softened into something approximating warmth. Of course you are, darling, we know that. We're just trying to do what's best for this family. She smoothed my hair back, a rare gesture of affection. You understand that Oliver needs more right now because he's older and his education is more critical? You understand that we're spending your trust money wisely? I nodded. And you understand that if anyone, Mr. Ashworth, teachers, anyone, asks you questions about how we manage things, you simply say everything is fine? I nodded again. Good. She kissed my forehead, something she almost never did. Now go wash up for dinner. I went upstairs to the bathroom, catching my reflection in the mirror. 10 years old, small for my age, brown hair in a ponytail, wearing Oliver's hand-me-down jumper because there's no point buying new clothes when you're still growing. Everything is fine, I practiced saying. Everything is fine. If I said it enough times, maybe I'd start believing it. That night, after everyone was asleep, I snuck downstairs and retrieved Mr. Ashworth's crumpled business card from the bin. I smoothed it out and hid it in the back of my copy of Matilda, the Roald Dahl book about a girl with terrible parents who finds escape in books and eventually her own power. I didn't call him. Not then. But knowing I could, knowing someone out there was watching, gave me the smallest spark of hope. The pattern continued for the next 2 years. Every October, Mr. Ashworth came for the audit. Every October, I heard raised voices from Father's study. Every October, the accounts were technically approved, but with increasing reluctance. And every year, the disparity between Oliver's life and mine grew wider. When Oliver turned 16, Father and Mother threw him a birthday party at the house. Catered food, 50 guests, a DJ. Cost, £8,000, classified as a family celebration event. When I turned 11, Mother bought me a cake from Tesco and we had dinner at home, just the 4 of us. Oliver complained the entire time that his friends were going to the cinema and he was stuck at my boring birthday dinner. No one sang happy birthday. Oliver got a MacBook Pro for his 16th birthday. I got a second-hand iPod Nano. Oliver went on a school trip to Greece. I was told trips were unnecessary expenses for primary school students. Oliver had a tutor for every subject. I did my homework alone in my tiny room, struggling through maths problems no one would help me with because you need to learn independence, Amy. And through it all, I absorbed the central message: Oliver mattered. I didn't. But I was still young enough to hope that maybe, if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, they might start to love me the way they loved him. Children are remarkably good at finding ways to blame themselves. Everything shifted the summer I turned 11. I was in the attic, technically off limits, but I discovered that no one really cared what I did as long as I stayed out of the way. The attic was full of grandmother Vivienne's old things, boxes of fabric swatches, design sketches, fashion magazines from the 70s and 80s. I'd spent hours up there, looking through her old portfolios, imagining the life she must have led. That's when I found the box marked for Amy open with time. Inside were letters, 21 of them, each in an envelope labeled with an age. Amy age 9, Amy age 10, all the way to Amy age 21. My hands shook as I opened the first one, the one for age 9, which I'd already passed. My darling Amy, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I wanted more time to prepare you to explain things properly, but life rarely cooperates with our plans. I left you my estate because I recognized something in you that I'd never seen in your mother or your brother: a creative spirit, an artist's eye, a hunger to make beautiful things. I saw it in the way you mixed colors when you painted, in the careful way you arranged your drawings, in the questions you asked about why certain designs worked and others didn't. Your mother resents beauty she cannot control. She sees value only in what can be measured, quantified, and put on a CV. She spent her entire life trying to escape the shadow of my frivolous career, as she calls it. She wanted academic respectability, and she got it. But she's never understood that creation, real creation, requires risk and passion and the willingness to fail spectacularly. I suspect she will not be happy about my will. I suspect she will see your inheritance as yet another way I've chosen you over her: beauty over intellect, frivolity over substance. She's wrong, of course. I'm giving you freedom. Money is freedom, Amy. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. But I'm also aware that you're very young and your parents will control this money until you're 21. I've structured the trust to protect you as much as possible, but I know your mother. She'll find ways to use it for Oliver for themselves. She'll make you feel guilty for having what she thinks should be hers. Don't believe her. You deserve every penny. You deserve the house. You deserve the freedom to become whoever you're meant to be. The money I left is to give you choices when you're old enough to make them. Wait if you must. Endure if you have to. But when you're 21, take what's yours and build the life you want. And Amy, don't let them convince you that you're ordinary. You're extraordinary. You just need time to see it. All my love, Grandmother Vivienne. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Someone had seen me, really seen me. Not as an inconvenience or a burden or a less impressive version of Oliver, but as a person with value and potential. And that person was dead. I opened the next letter, age 10, even though I knew I was supposed to wait. Dearest Amy, if you're reading these in order, you're 10 now, double digits. Are you still drawing? I hope so. I hope your mother hasn't crushed that out of you yet. I need to tell you something about Victoria, your mother. I love her, but I don't like her very much, and I haven't for a long time. She was such an angry child, furious that I worked instead of attending every school function, resentful of every hour I spent in my studio instead of helping with her homework. She wanted a traditional mother who baked biscuits and volunteered at school fetes. Instead, she got me. I tried, Amy, I really did. But I was building a business, employing people, creating something that mattered. And yes, Victoria paid a price for that. I missed things. I wasn't the mother she needed. But instead of forgiving me or at least understanding the complexities of my choices, she spent her entire adult life punishing me for them. She chose the most traditional, respectable path possible: academia, marriage to another academic, 2 children, the whole proper package, specifically to prove she was better than me. And now she has to live with the fact that I've given everything to you instead of her. She'll see it as the ultimate insult, as me choosing you, the next generation, over her. As me saying you're more worthy. I'm not saying that for the record. I'm saying you need this money more than she does. She has tenure, a husband, a career. She has security. You'll need independence that money can buy. But she won't see it that way. She'll make you pay for my decisions. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I'm putting this burden on you. But I trust you to be strong enough to carry it. Love always, Grandmother V. I sat in the dusty attic, surrounded by boxes of my dead grandmother's belongings, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just about favoritism or sibling rivalry or difficult family dynamics. This was about my mother's lifelong resentment toward her own mother, and I was the proxy she'd use to continue that war. I was 11 years old, and I finally understood. My mother would never love me. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because loving me would feel like losing to Grandmother Vivienne all over again. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't be better or quieter or more convenient and make her love me. She'd made her choice the moment Grandmother's will was read. I was the enemy. I considered opening more letters, age 12, 13, all of them, but something stopped me. Grandmother had labeled them with specific ages for a reason. Maybe I needed to be older to understand what she was trying to tell me. Maybe the letters contained information that would only make sense with more life experience. Or maybe I was afraid of what else I'd learn. I carefully put the letters back in the box, keeping only the first 2. I hid the box behind some old trunks where no one would think to look. The 2 letters I'd opened went back into my copy of Matilda, along with Mr. Ashworth's business card. My small collection of escape routes, hidden between pages about a girl who escaped her terrible parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. That autumn, I started secondary school at the local comprehensive. It was fine, not great, not terrible, just fine. I made a few friends, did reasonably well in classes, stayed under the radar. My art teacher, Mrs. Chen, noticed my drawings and encouraged me to take GCSE art when the time came. You have a real eye for color and composition, she said, looking at a watercolor I'd done of the view from my attic window. Have you had formal training? My grandmother taught me a bit, I said, before she died. Well, she taught you well. You should consider developing this talent. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but when I mentioned it at dinner that night, that Mrs. Chen thought I should pursue art, Oliver laughed. Art? What are you going to do with art? Become a starving painter living in a garret? Oliver, don't be cruel, Mother said, but she was smiling. Though he has a point, Amy. Art is a lovely hobby, but it's not a practical career path. You should focus on subjects with more concrete prospects. Grandmother had an art career, I pointed out quietly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Father set down his fork carefully. Your grandmother was the exception, not the rule. She was also extraordinarily talented and lucky. Most people who pursue art end up disappointed. Plus, Mother added, her voice sharp. Vivienne's obsession with her career destroyed her personal life. She was a terrible mother and a mediocre grandmother. Is that really who you want to emulate? I stared at my plate, eyes burning with tears I wouldn't let fall. I just thought, that's the problem, Oliver interrupted. You don't think. You just do whatever random thing catches your fancy without considering the practical implications. Oliver, that's enough, Father said mildly. Then to me, Amy, we're not saying you can't enjoy art as a hobby. We're simply suggesting you maintain realistic expectations about your future. You're not Vivienne. You don't have her drive or discipline or, frankly, her talent. That's not an insult, it's just reality. It felt like an insult. It felt like he'd taken my one thing, the one area where someone had told me I had potential, and crushed it beneath the weight of his low expectations. I excused myself and went to my small room, where I sat on my narrow bed and stared at the peeling wallpaper and told myself that they were probably right. I probably wasn't talented. Mrs. Chen was probably just being nice. Grandmother probably would have been disappointed in me too if she'd lived long enough to see how thoroughly average I turned out to be. I was 12 years old, and I was learning to hate myself in precisely the way they wanted me to. The renovations continued. When I was 12, they redid the master suite, the entire second floor, with an en-suite bathroom that cost £40,000 alone. Heated floors, a rain shower, marble everywhere. Father justified it to Mr. Ashworth as necessary repairs to prevent water damage. Meanwhile, the radiator in my room still only worked intermittently. When I mentioned that I was cold at night, Mother gave me an extra blanket and told me to stop complaining. Oliver got a new laptop for his A-level studies. Cost £2,000. I asked if I could have art supplies for my GCSE coursework, maybe some decent paints, some proper paper, and was told that the school provided adequate materials and I should make do. The message was constant and clear. Your needs don't matter. Your comfort doesn't matter. You don't matter. Except as a source of funding for Oliver's golden future. When Oliver was accepted to Oxford to read law, Mother actually cried with joy. She called every relative and friend. We had to share the news. Father wrote a Facebook post about the proudest day of my life. There was a celebration dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Cost £4,000. When I passed my GCSEs with mostly A's and A stars, quite good actually, especially considering I'd done it with no help and no encouragement, Mother said, "Well done," and immediately changed the subject to Oliver's upcoming Oxford orientation. I'd worked so hard for those grades. I'd stayed up late in my cold little room, studying by the inadequate overhead light because I didn't have a proper desk lamp. I'd taught myself through YouTube videos when I didn't understand concepts because asking for help at home meant being told I should figure it out myself. And I'd done it. I'd succeeded despite every disadvantage, but it didn't matter because I wasn't Oliver. The summer before I started sixth form, I made a decision. I was going to apply to university. Not just any university, a good one. I was going to study something practical like economics or business, something Father and Mother couldn't dismiss as frivolous. I was going to prove I was worth investing in, and then maybe they'd finally see me as something other than a burden with a trust fund. I spent that summer working at a local cafe, saving money. Mother was furious when I told her I'd gotten a job. A Palmer, working at a coffee shop. Do you want to embarrass this family? I want spending money, I said. For college applications and things. You have a trust fund, she snapped, which you control, I pointed out, and which you've made clear is primarily for Oliver's benefit. Her face went rigid. That is not fair, Amy. Everything we do is for this family. If you want spending money, fine, but every penny you earn will contribute to household expenses. You live here rent-free after all. I stared at her. I'm 16, and this is my house. Legally, yes. Practically, you're a child living under our care. If you want to work, wonderful, but you'll contribute to the household. That's what family does. So I worked 30 hours a week at minimum wage and brought every paycheck home, where Mother took it and deposited it into the household account. I never saw any of it again, but I kept working because at least at the cafe, people treated me like a person. My manager, a kind woman named Rosie, actually asked how my day was and listened to my answers. Customers learned my name and said please and thank you. It was such a stark contrast to home that I started taking extra shifts just to avoid being there. It was also at the cafe that I met Sarah Chen, no relation to my art teacher, a university student who worked part-time and studied economics at LSE. She was brilliant and funny and treated me like an equal despite the 4-year age gap. "You're working here to save for uni?" she asked one afternoon during a quiet shift. "Yeah, I want to study business or economics, something practical." "Good for you. Where are you thinking of applying?" I listed off my targets: LSE, Warwick, Durham, all excellent schools, all highly competitive. Sarah whistled. "Ambitious, I like it. What do your parents think?" "They don't know yet. I'm still building up my grades and working on my personal statement." She studied me for a moment. "Why do I get the feeling your parents aren't super supportive?" I shrugged, not trusting myself to speak without crying. "Hey," she said gently, "whatever's going on at home, and you don't have to tell me, just remember that university can be an escape route. Financial aid exists. Student loans exist. You don't have to stay stuck in a bad situation forever." "I have a trust fund," I heard myself say. "A big one. I get access when I'm 21. "Oh," she processed that. "So you're not poor, you're just not allowed to use your own money?" "My parents control it until I'm 21, and they mostly use it for my older brother." Sarah's face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, then anger. "That's fucked up, Amy. That's genuinely fucked up." It was the first time anyone had said it out loud. That what was happening to me wasn't normal or acceptable or just complicated family dynamics. It was fucked up. And hearing someone else say it gave me permission to feel angry instead of guilty. I applied to universities that autumn. I spent my 17th birthday working on my personal statement, alone in my room, while downstairs mother and father hosted a dinner party for Oliver's law school friends. I hadn't been invited. When I finally had my applications ready, I needed father to sign the UCAS form. He was still my legal guardian. I also needed to discuss funding. "I'd like to apply to LSE, I told him one evening, "or Warwick for economics." He looked up from his book, frowning slightly as if trying to remember who I was. "Economics? When did you become interested in economics?" "I've been taking A-level economics. I'm predicted an A-star." "I see." He closed his book. "And you think LSE is realistic?" "My teachers do. They think I have a strong application." He was quiet for a moment. "Have you considered the costs? LSE is expensive, even for domestic students. Accommodation in London alone is—" "I know. I was hoping the trust fund could." "The trust fund is nearly depleted of available annual returns," he interrupted. "Oliver's Oxford fees are £60,000 a year between tuition, accommodation, and living expenses. There's simply nothing left over." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "But the trust generates over £200,000 annually. How is there nothing left? House maintenance, family expenses, savings for future needs, it's all allocated." "Can I see the allocation breakdown?" His eyes narrowed. "Are you questioning our management?" "No, I just want to understand. We've been managing your trust responsibly for 9 years, he said coldly. "Mr. Ashworth audits every year and finds everything in order. If you want to go to university, you'll do what most students do, take out student loans. Consider it character building." Oliver didn't have to take out loans. Oliver is exceptional. His education is an investment that will yield returns. You're planning to study economics at a mid-tier university. It's not the same. LSE isn't mid-tier? It's not Oxford, he said flatly. "Look, Amy, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm being realistic. You're a perfectly adequate student with perfectly adequate prospects. Student loans exist for people like you. Oliver needed more support because he's destined for more. That's just reality." "People like you?" I was people like me, adequately mediocre, not worth investing in. I left the room before I said something I'd regret. That night, I opened the next letter from grandmother, age 17. "My darling Amy, if you're 17 now, you're probably thinking about university. Your mother will try to sabotage this. She'll tell you you're not good enough for top schools, that you should settle for something realistic, that investing in your education is wasteful. She's lying. You're good enough. You're bright enough. And the money I left is yours, specifically intended for your education and future. If they're refusing to fund your university education while they've lavished everything on Oliver, document it. Every conversation, every refusal, you'll need this evidence later. But more importantly, don't let them break your spirit. Apply to the best schools. Take out loans if you must. Survive the next 4 years, and when you're 21, you'll be free. The money I left you wasn't meant to be hoarded or saved for more important priorities. It was meant to give you freedom. They're stealing that from you, but only temporarily. Hold on, darling, you're almost there. Love, Grandmother V." I pressed the letter to my chest and cried quietly so no one would hear. Grandmother had known. Of course she'd known. She'd predicted exactly how this would play out. The next day, I called Mr. Ashworth from the school library. "Amy," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Is everything all right? I need to know something." "The trust fund, how much has been spent on my education specifically?" A pause. "I'd need to review the detailed breakdowns, but from memory, very little. Your state school education costs nothing, of course. There were some school supply purchases, a laptop 3 years ago, perhaps £5,000 total over 9 years. And how much has been spent on Oliver's education?" Another pause, longer this time. "I can't give you exact figures without the files in front of me, but substantial amounts. Over £400,000 since your grandmother passed. £400,000 for Oliver. £5,000 for me. Is that legal?" I asked. "Unfortunately, yes. The trust terms allow for use of annual returns for family expenses and education. They're not technically required to spend equally on you and your brother. As long as they're providing for your basic needs and maintaining the principal, they're within their rights. So there's nothing I can do." "Not until you're 21 and take control yourself. But Amy," his voice softened, "document everything, keep records. When you take control, you may want to pursue breach of fiduciary duty claims, but for now, the law is on their side." "Thank you," I whispered. "Are you safe? Are they treating you all right?" I thought about my cold room, my confiscated paychecks, my dismissed achievements, my crushed dreams. "I'm fine," I lied. "I'll see you at the audit." I hung up and sat in the library for another hour, just breathing. For more years until freedom. For more years of being treated like I didn't matter in a house I owned, funded by money meant for me. For more years. I could survive that. I had to. I applied to LSE, Warwick, Durham, and Bristol as a backup. I wrote my personal statement late at night in my freezing room, pouring everything I had into explaining why I wanted to study economics, how I'd watched financial systems impact real people's lives, how I wanted to understand the mechanisms of wealth and poverty, how numbers told stories if you knew how to read them. I didn't mention that I'd learned about financial exploitation firsthand, watching my parents drain my trust fund while calling it responsible management. My teachers were supportive. My economics teacher, Mr. Acaffer, wrote me a glowing reference. "You're one of the most analytical students I've taught," he told me. "LSE would be lucky to have you." But at home, my applications were met with indifference at best, hostility at worst. When my LSE acceptance came in February, conditional on achieving AAA at A-level, I ran downstairs with the letter heart-pounding with excitement. This was it. Proof that I was good enough that I could compete with the best. Mother was in the kitchen with Oliver, who was home for reading week. I burst in, breathless. "I got into LSE, conditional offer." Mother glanced up from her tea. "That's nice, dear. That's nice, dear. Not congratulations or we're proud of you or well done. Just nice the way you'd acknowledge someone mentioning they'd seen a pleasant sunset." Oliver actually laughed. "LSE, Amy, that's a joke. You barely scraped into 6th form. There's no way you'll get AAA. My teachers think I will. I'm predicted A star A star A. Predictions mean nothing," he said dismissively. "I was predicted 4 A stars and actually achieved them. You'll probably get BBC if you're lucky." "Oliver," Mother said, but she was smiling. "Be kind. I'm sure Amy will do her best." "Her best isn't very good though, is it?" Oliver continued. "I mean, let's be honest, she's academically mediocre. She always has been. Getting into LSE with conditional offers isn't the same as actually achieving the grades and attending." I looked at Mother, waiting for her to defend me, to say something, anything, that suggested she believed in me even slightly. She took a sip of tea and said nothing. "Right," I said quietly. "Well, I'm going to try anyway." "Of course you will," Mother said in that same pleasant, distant tone. "Just don't be too disappointed if it doesn't work out. Not everyone is suited for elite universities." I left the kitchen and went back to my room, where I sat on my bed and stared at the LSE letter until the words blurred. I would get those grades. I would prove them wrong. I had to. I spent the next 4 months studying like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. University wasn't just about education, it was about escape. About living somewhere they couldn't control me, even if I had to take out loans to do it. I worked at the cafe every weekend to save money, even though Mother confiscated my paychecks. I told myself that at least I was documenting income, building a work history, showing I could be independent. Sarah, my LSE friend from the cafe, helped me with economics concepts I didn't fully understand. "You're going to smash these exams," she said confidently. "You're easily one of the smartest people I know, and I'm at LSE, so that's saying something." It was the first time in years someone had called me smart without qualifiers like adequate or for your level. My A-level exams were in May and June. I walked into each one terrified but prepared. I'd done every practice paper I could find. I'd memorized case studies and economic models and mathematical formulas until they were seared into my brain. When I finished my last exam, Economics Paper 3, I sat outside the exam hall and cried with relief. I'd done it. Whatever the results, I'd given it everything. Results day was in August. I woke up at dawn, too nervous to sleep, and checked UCAS at exactly 6 a.m. when results were released. Economics, a star mathematics, a star history, a AAA, I'd exceeded my conditional offer. I was going to LSE. I sat in my small room, staring at my phone screen, letting it sink in. Despite everything, despite the lack of support, despite being told I was mediocre, despite studying in a freezing room with inadequate lighting, I'd done it. I got dressed and went downstairs where Mother and Father were having breakfast. Oliver was home again, having just finished his second year at Oxford with a first, which we'd all heard about extensively. "I got my results," I said. Father looked up. "And? A starry starry, I got into LSE. There was a beat of silence. "Well," Father said finally. "That's surprisingly good, Amy. Well done. Surprisingly good. Not just well done or we're proud. Surprisingly good, as if he'd expected me to fail and was mildly shocked I hadn't. Mother's lips were pressed into a thin line. "I suppose you'll need to sort out student finance then. We can't help with tuition or accommodation, obviously. The trust fund is fully allocated." "Obviously," I echoed. "Don't be sullen," she snapped. "You're getting a university education, which is more than most people have. Being expected to take out loans like a normal student isn't a tragedy. Oliver didn't have to take out loans. Oliver is exceptional, we've been over this." She stood, taking her plate to the sink. "I have a meeting at the university. Congratulations on your results, Amy. I'm sure you'll do adequately at LSE. Adequately, always adequately. Never exceptionally, never brilliantly. Never anything that suggested I might be worth celebrating." After they left, I sat alone in the kitchen of my own house. The house worth nearly £6 million now, the house my grandmother left me, and ate cereal by myself while contemplating how I'd fund university with no parental support. That afternoon, I called Mr. Ashworth again. "Congratulations on your results," he said warmly when I told him. "LSE is an outstanding achievement, Amy. You should be very proud." "Thank you." I paused. "Mr. Ashworth, is there any way to access my trust fund early? For university fees?" "I'm afraid not. The terms are very clear, no access to principal until 21, and all annual returns are controlled by your parents until then. However," he paused, "there may be another option. I could petition the court to allow trust fund use specifically for your higher education, given that it's a legitimate educational expense explicitly covered by the trust's purpose." Hope flared. "Would that work?" "Possibly, but your parents would fight it and it could take months. You start university in September, correct?" "Yes." "Then I'd advise applying for full student finance for now, maximum tuition loan and maintenance loan. It's not ideal, but it will get you to LSE. Once you're 21 and control the trust yourself, you can pay off the loans in full if you choose." So that's what I did. I applied for the maximum loans, £9,250 for tuition, £13,000 for maintenance. I'd graduate with over £60,000 in debt for a 3-year degree while sitting on a trust fund worth over £8 million that I couldn't touch. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I moved to London in September, into a tiny room in LSE halls that was somehow still larger than my bedroom in Kensington. I had a desk, a proper desk, with a good lamp. I had a radiator that worked. I had a window that actually got sunlight. It was the best room I'd ever had. University was revelation after revelation. Professors who took me seriously. Classmates who didn't know I was the mediocre one or not as smart as Oliver. A meritocracy where I succeeded or failed based on my own work, not on who I was related to. I thrived. First term, I got straight firsts on all my essays and exams. My personal tutor, Dr. Amelia Foster, called me in for a meeting. "Miss Palmer," she said, reviewing my grades, "your work is exceptional. Have you considered applying for the competitive modules next year? Economic theory, advanced econometrics. They're quite challenging, but I think you could handle them." Exceptional. Someone thought my work was exceptional. I wanted to cry. "I'd love to," I managed. "Excellent. You should also think about internship applications for next summer. Top students often secure positions at places like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the Bank of England. Your analytical skills are exactly what they look for." I walked out of that meeting floating. For the first time in my life, an authority figure was encouraging me to aim higher, not lower, to be ambitious, not realistic. I applied for internships that autumn. All the prestigious ones: Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Barclays. I spent weeks perfecting my applications, doing practice interviews with the careers service, preparing for the brutal assessment centers these firms were famous for. I didn't tell my parents I was applying. What was the point? They'd just tell me I was aiming too high. In November, I got a call from Goldman Sachs. They wanted me for a first-round interview. I prepared obsessively. I read everything I could about their recent deals, their corporate structure, their culture. I practiced mental arithmetic until I could calculate bond yields and discount rates in my sleep. I bought one professional outfit from a charity shop because I couldn't afford new clothes: black trousers, white shirt, blazer. Simple but appropriate. The interview was terrifying. 3 analysts grilling me on economic theory, market trends, my understanding of Goldman's business. Then case studies, complex financial scenarios I had to analyze on the spot. I walked out certain I'd failed. 2 weeks later, they offered me a summer internship. 10 weeks, £600 per week, with potential conversion to a graduate role if I performed well. I actually screamed when I got the email. My flatmate thought someone had died. This time, I did call home to share the news. Maybe I thought this would finally make them see me differently. Goldman Sachs wasn't adequate. It was elite, exceptional, exactly the kind of thing they valued. Father answered. I got a summer internship at Goldman Sachs, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's nice, Amy, good for you. Nice, good for you. The same tone he'd use if I told him I'd gotten a part-time job at Starbucks. Father, it's Goldman Sachs. It's one of the most competitive internships in finance. Thousands of people apply. I'm sure it is. Well done. Is there something else you needed? I'm in the middle of marking papers. No, that's all. Right. Well, congratulations. Speak soon. He hung up. I sat on my narrow university bed and laughed, though it came out sounding more like crying. Of course they didn't care. It didn't matter what I achieved. I would never be Oliver. But here's what I realized in that moment. I didn't need them to care anymore. I had Dr. Foster believing in me. I had Goldman Sachs believing in me. I had classmates and professors and a whole world outside my family that saw my value. My parents' opinion of me was becoming irrelevant, and that felt like the beginning of freedom. I went home for Christmas break because I couldn't afford to stay in London. Halls closed and I had nowhere else to go. It was 3 weeks of being invisible in my own house. Oliver held court at every meal, talking about his Oxford experiences, his internship at a prestigious law firm, his plans to become a barrister. Mother and father hung on every word. I sat quietly, eating my food, contributing nothing because any attempt at conversation was either ignored or dismissed. On Christmas Day, Oliver received gifts worth easily £1,000, new laptop, designer clothes, expensive watch. I got a £20 book voucher. We thought you could buy your own gifts with your student loan, Mother explained when I must have looked disappointed. You're an adult now, we don't need to spoil you. Oliver was 22, apparently still young enough to spoil. I was 18, old enough to fund myself. I spent most of the break in my small room, reading economics textbooks for the next term, counting down days until I could leave. On New Year's Eve, I overheard Mother and Father talking in their bedroom. I'd gone to the bathroom and was walking back when I heard my name. Don't know what Vivienne was thinking, Mother was saying. Leaving everything to Amy. The girl has no ambition, no direction. She'll probably waste it all within 5 years of taking control. She got into LSE, Father pointed out, and that Goldman Sachs internship is relatively impressive. Please, LSE takes anyone these days, and internships mean nothing. She'll be lucky to get a graduate job earning $30,000 a year. Meanwhile, Oliver is on track to be a barrister earning 6 figures by 30. We did invest more heavily in Oliver's education, Father said. Perhaps if we'd... Don't, Mother interrupted sharply. Don't you dare suggest we made a mistake. Oliver was always the one worth investing in. Vivienne was a spiteful woman who wanted to punish me from beyond the grave by giving everything to Amy. But when Amy inevitably fails, at least we'll have Oliver's success to be proud of. When I inevitably failed. Not if, when. I stood in the dark hallway, listening to my mother casually predict my failure, and something inside me crystallized into diamond-hard determination. I would not fail. I would succeed so spectacularly that it would be impossible to ignore. Not for them, I was done trying to win their approval. For me, to prove to myself that I was everything they said I wasn't. The Goldman Sachs internship that summer was brutal. 14-hour days, complex modeling work, presentations to managing directors who could destroy you with a raised eyebrow. Half the interns were Oxbridge graduates with connections and confidence. The other half were scrappy state school kids like me, desperate to prove we belonged. I was terrified every single day, but I was also good at it. The work made sense to me. Financial modeling, risk analysis, market research, it was like solving puzzles, finding patterns in chaos. My supervisor, a senior analyst named Marcus Chen, was tough but fair. "You have good instincts," he told me after I'd correctly predicted a market movement everyone else had missed. "You see things other people don't. That's rare." At the end of 10 weeks, they offered me a graduate position starting after I finished my degree. £55,000 starting salary, plus bonus. More money than my parents made as senior academics. I accepted immediately. When I told father over the phone, he said, "That's a decent salary for a graduate position." Well done, decent. It was double the UK median salary for someone with decades of experience, and it was decent. I stopped calling home unless absolutely necessary after that. Second year at LSE was even better than first. I took the advanced modules Dr. Foster had recommended and got firsts in all of them. I joined the investment society, made friends with other ambitious finance students, networked relentlessly. I worked part-time at a tutoring center, teaching GCSE and A-level economics to pay for food and basics since my maintenance loan barely covered rent. I had no social life. No money for pubs or clubs or the kind of university experiences people wrote about. But I had purpose and direction and the growing certainty that I was building something real. In October of my second year, Mr. Ashworth's annual audit happened. I wasn't there, I was in London, but he called me afterward. "Amy, I wanted to update you on the trust status. The principal has actually grown to just over £8.1 million due to strong market performance. However, annual returns continue to be fully allocated to household expenses and Oliver's education. He's now at Lincoln's and doing his bar training, which is costing approximately £40,000 annually. Of course it is. I've documented everything carefully. When you turn 21, you'll have a complete record of all expenditures. If you choose to pursue breach of fiduciary duty claims, I won't," I said firmly. "You won't." "No, when I turn 21, I'm taking my money and cutting all contact. I'm not wasting years in court fighting with them. I just want them gone." Mr. Ashworth was quiet for a moment. "That's remarkably mature, Amy. It's practical. They've made it clear how they feel about me. I'm returning the favor. Well, when the time comes, I'll help you however I can. You deserve better than what they've given you." "I'm giving myself better," I said. "That's the point." After we hung up, I opened grandmother's letter for age 19, even though I was only 18. I needed her perspective. "Darling Amy, you're in university now, I hope. Learning, growing, becoming whoever you're meant to be. I imagine your parents are still treating you like an inconvenience, still spending your money on Oliver, still making you feel small. Here's what I need you to understand. Their treatment of you says everything about them and nothing about you. Your mother is a deeply insecure woman who measures her worth through her children's achievements. When she couldn't control mine, she transferred that need to control onto Oliver and you. Oliver complied, became the perfect academic child she could parade around. You refused to fit the mold, and she's punished you for it ever since. But here's the beautiful irony. By refusing to break you, they've made you stronger. Every time they told you that you were mediocre, you worked harder. Every time they denied you resources, you found another way. Every time they pushed you down, you got back up. They think they're teaching you humility. They're actually teaching you resilience. 2 more years until 21. Then you're free. Don't waste that freedom on revenge. Don't waste it trying to prove anything to them. Just live well. Live brilliantly. Live so fully that they become irrelevant to your story. That's the best revenge, happiness. All my love, Grandmother V. I read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it back into my copy of Matilda, which I still kept despite being in university. Grandmother was right. I'd become strong specifically because they'd tried to break me. And I was so close to freedom now. Just hold on a little longer. Third year was a blur of final exams, dissertation writing, and job preparation. Goldman Sachs kept in regular contact, confirming my graduate position for September after graduation. I'd also been promoted to senior tutor at the tutoring center, earning £25 per hour teaching economics. Between that and my summer internship savings, I'd managed to build up nearly £4,000 in my personal account, money Mother couldn't touch because she didn't know about it. It wasn't much, but it was mine. In March, I turned 20. One more year until I could access my trust fund. One more year until I could evict my parents from my house. One more year until complete independence. I didn't go home for my birthday. I told my parents I had too much coursework. Really, I just couldn't face another birthday being forgotten or minimized. Instead, my LSE friends took me to a pub in Bloomsbury. We had cheap wine and cheaper food, and they sang Happy Birthday off-key, and it was the best birthday I'd had since grandmother died. Sarah, my friend from the cafe, who'd also ended up at LSE, different program, but we'd stayed close, gave me a card that said, "To the future Wolf of Wall Street, but ethical." "You're going to be running Goldman Sachs in 10 years, she said, already tipsy. "And when you are, remember us little people." I laughed, but part of me thought, maybe not Goldman Sachs, but something big enough that my parents would see and know they were wrong about me. Finals were in May. I walked out of my last exam, Advanced Financial Economics, feeling like I'd either aced it or completely failed. There was no middle ground. Results came in July. First class honors, 79% average, one of the highest marks in my cohort. Dr. Foster called me personally. "Amy, your dissertation on behavioral economics and financial decision-making has been nominated for the departmental prize. It's absolutely first-rate work. Have you considered postgraduate study? A master's or PhD? You could have a real academic career if you wanted." "Thank you, but I'm starting at Goldman Sachs in September." Of course. "Well, if you ever change your mind, you'd have my enthusiastic support." I graduated in July in a ceremony my parents didn't attend. They claimed they had prior commitments, but Oliver's graduation from his bar training program 2 weeks later apparently was flexible enough for them to clear their schedules. I collected my degree certificate alone, took a selfie in my cap and gown, and posted it on social media with the caption, "First class honors from LSE." Not bad for someone adequately mediocre. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. I started at Goldman Sachs in September, 3 weeks before my 21st birthday. The work was intense, the hours brutal, but I loved it. Numbers and analysis and markets, it all made sense in a way that human relationships never had. My starting salary was £55,000 plus a £15,000 signing bonus. After tax, I'd earn more in my first year than my parents made combined. I found a studio flat in Brixton, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Rent was £850 per month, expensive but manageable. I bought furniture from IKEA, hung my LSE degree on the wall, and stood in the middle of my small space feeling like a queen surveying her empire. This was mine, earned by me. No one could take it away. On October 15th, my 21st birthday, I took the day off work. I had an appointment at Mr. Ashworth's office at 9 a.m. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best work suit. Mr. Ashworth greeted me with a smile and a folder thick with documents. "Happy birthday, Amy. Are you ready?" I've been ready for 13 years. We spent 2 hours going through everything. The trust principal, £8.1 million in investments. The house, now valued at £5.8 million due to the London property boom. The ongoing royalties, still generating approximately £180,000 annually. Total assets I was inheriting, nearly £14 million. I had to read the number 3 times to believe it. "Your parents are still listed as living at the Kensington property," Mr. Ashworth said carefully. "How would you like to handle that?" I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. "I want them out. I'm giving them 30 days notice to vacate. Legal minimum. They won't go quietly." "I don't care, it's my house. I want them out." Mr. Ashworth pulled out pre-prepared eviction notices. He'd anticipated my wishes. "I'll have these served by a process server today. They'll receive formal notice by end of business." "Perfect." "Amy," he said gently, "are you sure you don't want to pursue claims for breach of fiduciary duty? They spent over £2.3 million of your money on non-essential expenses. A court might." "No," I said firmly. "I want a clean break. I'm taking my money and walking away. They can keep what they stole. I'm done with them." He nodded slowly. "That's very generous and very wise. Litigation would keep you tied to them for years." "Exactly. I'd rather be free." We signed all the documents transferring control to me. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, property deeds, everything was now in my name alone. When I walked out of that office at 11 a.m., I was officially wealthy and officially independent. I was also officially an orphan by choice. My parents received their eviction notices that afternoon. I know because father called me 17 times in 3 hours. I didn't answer. Finally, he left a voicemail. "Amy, this is ridiculous. You can't just kick your family out of our home. Call me back immediately so we can discuss this like adults." Our home. Interesting choice of words for a house that legally belonged to me and only me. Mother sent a text. "How dare you treat your family this way after everything we've done for you? This is unbelievably cruel and ungrateful." Oliver sent an email. "Amy, I know we've had our differences, but surely you can see that making mom and dad homeless is an overreaction. Let's talk about this." I deleted all of it without responding. Instead, I sent a single email to all 3 of them. To Richard, Victoria, and Oliver Palmer, "You have 30 days to vacate 28 Thornbury Road, Kensington. This is non-negotiable. The property is mine, as it has been since I was 8 years old. You have lived there rent-free for 13 years while spending over £2 million of my trust fund on yourselves. I am not interested in discussion or negotiation. Remove your belongings and leave the keys with Mr. Bernard Ashworth by November 14th. If you are not gone by that date, I will involve the police. Do not contact me again." Amy Palmer, the next 30 days were a masterclass in manipulation. Father tried the authority approach. "As your father, I'm ordering you to reconsider." Mother tried guilt. "After we raised you and sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us." Oliver tried logic. "Be reasonable, Amy. Where are we supposed to go on such short notice?" When those didn't work, they tried public shaming. Mother gave an interview to a local paper about her ungrateful daughter who was kicking out her loving family. The article painted me as a spoiled heiress who turned on the parents who devoted their lives to her. I could have responded, could have released the accounting showing how they'd spent my money, could have shared emails where they'd called me mediocre and worthless, but I didn't. Because grandmother was right, the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was irrelevance. I let them tell their story. Anyone who mattered would eventually see the truth. On November 14th, exactly 30 days after notice was served, my parents still hadn't moved out. I called the police and a locksmith. When I arrived at the house at 9 a.m. with 2 constables, Mother opened the door with red-rimmed eyes. "Amy, please, can't we talk about this?" "No, you were given legal notice." "This is my property, you're trespassing." "We have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem. You've had 13 years of rent-free living in a multi-million-pound house. You should have saved for this eventuality." Father appeared behind her. "You're making a mistake. Family is supposed to." "We're not family," I said flatly. "We're people who share DNA, that's all we've ever been. Officers, please escort them out." It took 3 hours to physically remove them and their belongings. Mother sobbed dramatically. Father went silent and cold. Oliver, who'd shown up for moral support, called me every name he could think of. I stood on the pavement and watched movers load their things into a van headed to a rental flat in Croydon, feeling nothing but relief. When the house was finally empty, the locksmith changed all the locks. I walked through every room of my grandmother's house, my house, and felt her presence everywhere. In the studio, I found one more letter tucked into a drawer. It was labeled Amy, age 21. I sat on the floor of the empty studio and opened it. "My darling Amy, if you're reading this, you've made it. You're 21, you're free, and I'm so proud of you. I don't know what the last 13 years have been like. I can guess, knowing your mother, they weren't easy, but you survived. And now you have the resources to build whatever life you want. Don't let what they did to you define who you become. Don't let their cruelty make you cruel. Don't let their smallness make you small. You have money now, yes. But more importantly, you have yourself. You have your strength, your intelligence, your resilience. Those are worth more than any inheritance. Build something beautiful with this freedom, not to spite them, not to prove them wrong, but because you deserve beauty in your life. I wish I could be there to see who you become. But I trust that whoever you are at 21 is exactly who you were meant to be. I love you, I always did, and I always will." "Grandmother Vivienne," I cried then, alone in the empty house, mourning the grandmother I'd lost and the parents I'd never really had. But when I was done crying, I stood up, wiped my face, and started planning. I had a house worth millions. I had investments generating hundreds of thousands annually. I had a job I was good at and a future full of possibilities. I had everything except the one thing I'd wanted most as a child, a family who loved me. But I was learning that some things couldn't be bought or earned or wished into existence. Some things you just had to let go. The years after I evicted my parents were, paradoxically, the loneliest and happiest of my life. Lonely because I'd officially severed ties with the only family I had. No more obligatory Christmas dinners. No more pretending we were something we'd never been. Just silence where once there had been at least the illusion of connection. Happy because for the first time in 21 years, I was completely free to become whoever I wanted to be. I hired a property management company to oversee the Kensington house. They renovated it completely, stripped away every trace of my parents' occupancy, and restored it to something closer to grandmother's original vision. Then they listed it as a luxury short-term rental for £850 per night. It was booked solid within weeks. Between the rental income, my Goldman salary and bonuses, and the investment returns from the trust fund, I was earning over £400,000 annually by age 22. The numbers were almost obscene. I'd gone from counting pennies and having my minimum wage paychecks confiscated to having more money than I could reasonably spend. I didn't know what to do with it at first. I'd spent so long in survival mode, focused purely on getting through each day, each term, each year until I could escape, that I hadn't really thought about what came after escape. Sarah noticed during one of our regular coffee catch-ups in Canary Wharf. She was working at Deloitte now, doing well but not Goldman Sachs well. "You seem lost," she observed, watching me stir my latte absently. "Which is weird because objectively, you're killing it. You're the youngest analyst in your division to get promoted to associate. You're rich, you're independent, you should be ecstatic." "I am," I said automatically. "Bullshit, what's wrong?" I tried to articulate the strange emptiness I'd been feeling. I spent 13 years focused on one goal, getting free, and I did it. But now I don't know what I'm working toward anymore. I'm just existing, making money I don't need. Living in a flat that's just a place to sleep between 14-hour days at the office. So find a new goal. Like what? Sarah leaned back, studying me. What did you want to be when you were little, before everything went to shit with your family? I thought back to those weekends at grandmother's house, painting in her studio, learning about design and color and creating beauty. An artist, I said quietly, or a designer, something creative, but that was childish. Why was it childish? Because my parents said. I stopped, laughed bitterly. Jesus, I'm still letting them define what's valuable and what isn't. Yeah, you are. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Amy, you're 22 years old with more money than most people see in a lifetime. You could literally do anything, be anything. Why are you still living by their rules? It was a good question. Why was I? I didn't quit Goldman Sachs, I wasn't impulsive, and I genuinely enjoyed the work, but I did start exploring other interests. I enrolled in evening classes at Central St. Martin's, fashion illustration, textile design, color theory, all the things I'd loved as a child but had been told were frivolous. Turns out I was still good at it. Better than good, actually. My instructor, a former Vogue designer named Patricia Chen, pulled me aside after the third class. Where did you learn to see color like this? She asked, examining my latest illustration, a dress design in shades of emerald and gold. My grandmother taught me when I was young. She was a designer, Vivienne Palmer. Patricia's eyes widened. Vivienne Palmer of Palmer Atelier, that was your grandmother? Yes. My God, I studied her work in design school. She was a genius. Patricia looked at my illustration again. This makes sense now. You have her eye. Have you ever considered designing professionally? I work in finance. That's not what I asked. I didn't have an answer, but I kept taking the classes, kept designing. Started filling sketchbooks with ideas that would probably never become real garments, but satisfied something deep inside me that spreadsheets and financial models couldn't touch. For the first time since grandmother died, I was creating again, and it felt like coming home. Work at Goldman Sachs continued to go well. I was good at my job, exceptional even. My analysis was sharp, my instincts for market movements were usually right, and I worked harder than almost anyone else in my cohort. By 23, I'd been promoted to associate ahead of schedule. By 24, I was managing my own small team and earning £180,000 base salary plus bonuses that sometimes doubled that. I bought a penthouse in Canary Wharf with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen I never cooked in because I was never home long enough. It cost £850,000, which I paid in cash from my investment portfolio. The day I moved in, I hung my LSE degree in the study and my first real fashion illustration, a watercolor of a woman in a flowing evening gown, in the living room. 2 parts of me, both valid, both real. I also started donating money. Significant amounts. £50,000 annually to a charity supporting children in abusive homes. Another £50,000 to a scholarship fund for state school students applying to top universities. £25,000 to Central St. Martin's to fund a design scholarship for students from low-income backgrounds. I did it all anonymously. I didn't need credit or recognition. I just needed to know I was breaking cycles, giving opportunities to people like me who'd been told they weren't good enough. Sarah asked me once why I gave away so much when I could be buying designer clothes and exotic holidays. Because I don't need any of it to be happy, I told her, and someone else might need it to survive. She hugged me then, fierce and tight. You're a good person, Ames. Despite everything they did to you, you're genuinely good. I wasn't sure about that, but I was trying. I didn't hear from my parents for nearly 2 years after the eviction. Radio silence. No birthday cards, no Christmas messages, nothing. I told myself I didn't care. That I'd wanted this, complete separation, total independence. But there was a small, damaged part of me that still wondered if they ever thought about me, if they ever regretted how they treated me, if they ever missed me at all. The answer came when I was 24, in the form of a Facebook message from Oliver. Amy, I know we haven't spoken in a while. I'm reaching out because Mom and Dad are struggling financially. Dad had to take early retirement due to health issues, angina, nothing immediately life-threatening but serious enough that he can't handle the stress of teaching anymore. Their pensions are decent but not enough to maintain their standard of living. They're barely making ends meet. I'm asking, not for me but for them, if you could find it in your heart to help. Maybe a small allowance. £5,000 a month would make a huge difference to their quality of life. I know there's history. I know we haven't been the perfect family, but they're still your parents. They raised you. Doesn't that count for something? Please think about it. Oliver, I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a complicated tangle of emotions. There was anger, of course. The audacity of asking me for money after 13 years of financial exploitation. But there was also that small, desperate part of me that still wanted them to love me. The child Amy who thought maybe if I helped them now, they'd finally see my value. I showed the message to Sarah over drinks that evening. She read it, then looked at me with something like fury. Please tell me you're not actually considering this. They're in their 60s. Dad's sick. Maybe nothing, Sarah interrupted. Amy, these people spent £2 million of your money on your brother while you lived in a servant's room. They told you were mediocre for your entire childhood. They didn't come to your university graduation. They tried to shame you publicly when you evicted them from your house. And now, when they need money, suddenly you're family again? I know, but what? You think giving them money will make them love you? Her voice softened. Honey, people who love you conditionally will always find new conditions. They don't want a relationship with you. They want access to your bank account. I knew she was right. Logically, intellectually, I knew. But emotionally, I was still that 8-year-old girl desperately trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. I didn't respond to Oliver's message immediately. Instead, I did something I probably should have done years earlier. I found a therapist. Her name was Dr. Rachel Morrison, a psychologist specializing in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. She had a quiet office in Bloomsbury with comfortable chairs and a box of tissues that got a lot of use during our sessions. I told her everything. The favoritism, the financial exploitation, the constant message that I wasn't good enough. The eviction and the subsequent silence, and now this sudden reappearance when they needed something. What do you want to do? She asked after I showed her Oliver's message. I don't know, part of me wants to help, to prove I'm the bigger person. And the other part wants to tell them to fuck off. I laughed shakily. Sorry, is that unprofessional? This is a safe space. You can say fuck as much as you want. Dr. Morrison smiled gently. But I want you to think carefully about why you want to help. Is it because you genuinely want to support them, or because you're hoping that helping will finally make them love you? The tears came then, hot and fast. I just want them to see me, I sobbed. To acknowledge that I'm not mediocre, that I'm worth something, that they were wrong about me. Oh, Amy. Dr. Morrison handed me tissues. They already know they were wrong. Why do you think they're asking you for money? Because you've succeeded beyond anything they predicted. You're everything they said you couldn't be. They know. They just won't admit it because admitting it would mean acknowledging their own failures as parents. So giving them money won't change anything? It will change something, she said carefully. It will teach them that they can mistreat you and still benefit from your success. It will establish a pattern where you're the giver and they're the takers, which is exactly the dynamic you've spent years escaping. I blew my nose inelegantly. What should I do? I can't tell you what to do, but I can ask, What would you tell someone else in your situation? If your friend Sarah came to you with this exact scenario, what would you advise? I already knew the answer. I'd tell her to cut them off, to protect herself, to choose her own well-being over people who'd never chosen her. So why is it so hard to do that for myself? I asked. Because they're your parents. Because you're a good person who wants to believe in redemption. Because you're still hoping for a happy ending where they realize they were wrong and become the family you deserved. She paused. But Amy, they've shown you who they are repeatedly for 24 years. At some point, you have to believe them. It took me a week to write my response to Oliver. I drafted 17 different versions, some angry, some sad, some desperately hopeful that maybe this time would be different. In the end, I sent this. Oliver, I received your message asking for financial support for our parents. After careful consideration, my answer is no. For the first 21 years of my life, they had control over £8 million that my grandmother left specifically for me. They spent over $2 million of that money on your education and their lifestyle while I lived in a servant's room in my own house. They told me I was mediocre and worthless while funding every aspect of your exceptional life. They had 21 years to be parents. They chose to be parasites instead. Now they're experiencing the consequences of their choices. They're living on their pensions and their savings, just like millions of other retired people. That's not poverty. That's normal life. You're a qualified barrister. If they need financial support, you can provide it from the education they spent my money on. I'm not interested in funding their retirement any more than I funded their luxury renovations and expensive holidays while I worked minimum wage and gave them every penny. Do not contact me about this again. I've given them enough already. Amy, I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Oliver responded within an hour, "You're being cruel and vindictive. They're your parents. Family takes care of each other." I didn't respond to that one, but I did show Dr. Morrison at our next session. She smiled approvingly. "That's a healthy boundary. How do you feel?" "Guilty," I admitted, "and relieved, and angry that I feel guilty when I shouldn't. Guilt is normal when you're breaking dysfunctional patterns. You've been conditioned to prioritize their needs over yours for your entire life. It feels wrong to choose yourself because you've been taught that choosing yourself is selfish." "Is it selfish?" "No, Amy, it's self-preservation. There's a difference." My parents tried directly after Oliver's intervention failed. Mother sent a long email detailing their financial struggles, the cost of father's medication, how they'd sacrificed everything for me and Oliver. I read it once, then archived it without responding. Father called from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and cold. "Amy, this is your father, your mother, and I need to discuss your obligations to this family. Call me back." Obligations? Interesting word choice. I didn't call back. Instead, I blocked their numbers and email addresses. I blocked Oliver too, for good measure. Dr. Morrison had taught me that I didn't owe them explanations or justifications or closure. I didn't owe them anything. Sometimes the healthiest response is simply silence. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into it with renewed intensity, taking on the most challenging projects, volunteering for the assignments no one else wanted. I was building something, not just a career, but an identity separate from being the disappointing daughter or the mediocre one. At Goldman, I was Amy Palmer, sharp analyst, rising star, someone whose opinion mattered in meetings. I liked that version of myself better than any version my parents had ever seen. My managing director, a formidable woman named Claire Zhang, called me into her office one morning when I was 25. "Palmer, I'm putting you forward for the accelerated promotion track," she said without preamble. "If you maintain your current performance, you could make VP by 28. That's virtually unheard of." "Thank you," I managed, stunned. "Don't thank me, you've earned it. Your work on the Heathrow merger was exceptional. The client specifically requested you for their next project." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "You have a gift for seeing angles other people miss. Where did you develop that?" "Survival mostly," I said without thinking. Claire raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well, whatever the origin, it's serving you well. Keep it up." I walked out of that meeting feeling 10 feet tall, VP by 28, at Goldman Sachs. I wanted to call someone and share the news, celebrate this milestone, but there was no one to call. No family who'd be proud. No parents who'd finally acknowledge I'd proven them wrong. Just me, alone in my success. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow. That night, I went home to my expensive penthouse and sat alone with a bottle of wine I didn't really want, looking at the Thames and thinking about grandmother's letters. I'd read all of them now, over the years. Each one at the appropriate age, just as she'd intended. The letter for age 25 had said, "Darling Amy, if you're 25 now, you're likely well established in whatever career you've chosen. I hope you're successful. I hope you're happy. But I also hope you're not alone. One of my greatest regrets is that I prioritized my work over relationships. I built an empire but came home to an empty house. I had respect and success and financial security, but no one to share it with. Don't make my mistake, sweetheart. Success means nothing if you have no one to celebrate it with. Money means nothing if you're too lonely to enjoy it. Build a life, not just a career. Find people who love you for who you are, not what you can give them. Create a family of choice, not just biology. I failed at that. Please don't fail too. Love always, Grandmother V." I read that letter again now, tears blurring the words. Grandmother was right. I'd been so focused on proving I was successful, on building financial security, on achieving everything my parents said I couldn't, that I'd forgotten to build an actual life. I had money, I had career success. I had a beautiful flat and designer clothes and a calendar full of work obligations, but I was lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely. Sarah was my closest friend, but she had her own life, a serious boyfriend, a demanding job, friends from university I'd never really connected with. We met for coffee every few weeks, but it wasn't enough to fill the void. I needed more. Needed people who chose to be in my life because they wanted to be there, not because they were stuck with me or wanted something from me. I needed what Grandmother called a family of choice. But I had no idea how to build one. The universe has a funny way of providing answers when you finally ask the right questions. 2 weeks after my quarter-life crisis about loneliness, I was assigned to a new client project, a merger between 2 manufacturing firms. The client's chief legal counsel was a Scottish architect-turned-lawyer named Daniel Morrison. Our first meeting was in a conference room at Goldman's offices. Daniel showed up in a beautifully tailored suit that somehow still looked slightly rumpled, carrying a leather folder and wearing an expression of patient resignation. "I hate these corporate finance meetings," he said to me while we waited for the rest of the team. "No offense to you personally," I laughed. "None taken. Why are you here if you hate it?" "Because my firm is paying me obscene amounts to be here and I have student loans." He grinned. "I'm Daniel Morrison, by the way. You must be the Amy Palmer everyone speaks of in hushed, reverent tones." "I don't know about reverent." "Oh, trust me, your reputation precedes you." "Brilliant, driven, works harder than anyone else, probably doesn't sleep." He paused. "The last one might have been speculation on my part. Not inaccurate speculation." He studied me with disconcertingly direct blue eyes. "Let me guess, you're 25, maybe 26, already 2 promotions ahead of your peers, earning more than your parents made combined, and you're wondering if this is all there is to life." I stared at him. "That's oddly specific." "I'm 32 and just had the same crisis last year. Recognized the signs." He shrugged. "Turns out, making lots of money doing work you're good at isn't actually a personality." "Who knew?" I found myself laughing, really laughing for the first time in months. The merger project took 3 months. During that time, Daniel and I worked closely together on due diligence, financial modeling, and legal compliance. He was brilliant at his job but didn't take it too seriously, which was refreshing after years of Goldman's intensity. He also asked me questions no one else bothered to ask. "What do you do for fun?" he asked one evening when we were working late on a particularly complex valuation. "I work mostly." "That's not fun, that's just more work." "I take design classes sometimes." His eyebrows rose. "Design? Like fashion?" "Yeah, my grandmother was a designer." I sort of inherited the interest. "That's amazing. Can I see your work sometime?" No one had ever asked to see my designs. I'd never offered. They felt too personal, too vulnerable. But I found myself saying, "Yeah, maybe." The merger closed successfully in December. The client took us out for a celebration dinner, expensive restaurant, too much wine, the usual corporate festivity. As people were leaving, Daniel caught my arm. "Can I walk you to the tube?" "I'm getting a cab, but sure." We walked through the cold London streets, breath fogging in the December air. Daniel was quiet for a while, then said, "I have a confession." "Okay." "I've been trying to work up the courage to ask you out for about 6 weeks now." My heart did a complicated flip. "Oh, but you're intimidating as hell, and I figured you'd say no, so I kept chickening out." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "But the project's done now, so there's no professional conflict anymore." "So, Amy Palmer, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Not a work dinner, an actual date." I should have been smooth, confident, cool. Instead, I blurted, "I'm terrible at relationships. I've never really had one. I don't know how to do this." Daniel smiled. "Good thing I'm patient. What do you say?" I thought about grandmother's letter, about building a life, not just a career, about finding people who chose to be with me. Yes, I said, I'd like that. Our first date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Shoreditch. We talked for 4 hours about our jobs, our families, or lack thereof, our dreams and fears, and the strange loneliness of urban success. I told him about my parents, not everything but the broad strokes. The favoritism, the trust fund exploitation, the eviction. He listened without judgment, then said, "They sound like terrible people. You're better off without them." That's what my therapist says. You have a therapist. That's healthy. You don't think it's weak? God, no, I have one too. Anyone who's survived family trauma and isn't in therapy is just spreading the damage to everyone around them. He reached across the table, taking my hand. For what it's worth, I think you're extraordinary, and I'm sorry they never saw it. I cried a little bit then, right there in the restaurant. Daniel just squeezed my hand and passed me a napkin and didn't make me feel embarrassed about it. That's when I knew this might be something real. We dated for a year before he proposed. A year of discovering what healthy love looked like. What it felt like to be with someone who celebrated my successes instead of resenting them, who encouraged my design hobby instead of calling it frivolous, who wanted to know about my day and actually listened to the answer. Daniel's family was warm and welcoming in a way I'd never experienced. His mother, Margaret, hugged me the first time we met and said, "Oh, Danny's told us so much about you. We're so glad you're here." His father, Ian, was a retired architect who spent our first dinner together asking about my design work with genuine interest. His sister, Fiona, was blunt and funny and immediately treated me like we'd known each other for years. It was overwhelming and wonderful, and everything my own family had never been. Christmas with the Morrisons was a revelation. They actually enjoyed each other's company. They laughed and told stories and played silly board games, and no one kept score about who was more successful or whose achievements mattered more. On Christmas morning, Margaret gave me a gift, a beautiful sketchbook with my initials embossed on the cover. "Danny said you design," she explained. "I thought you might like this." I opened it to find the first page already filled with a note in her handwriting. "For Amy, who deserves every beautiful thing. Welcome to the family. Love, Margaret." I cried for the second time that holiday, happy tears this time. Daniel pulled me aside later. "You okay? Your mum called me family." "You are family, or you will be if you say yes to what I'm about to ask you in about 6 months. I laughed through tears. "Smooth. I try." He proposed in June on a trip to the Isle of Skye. We were standing on a cliff overlooking the sea, wind whipping our hair, and he just asked, "Amy Palmer, will you marry me?" No elaborate setup. No restaurant with hidden photographers, just us and the ocean, and the most important question I'd ever been asked. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely yes." We got engaged, and for the first time in my life, I had a future that included someone who'd chosen me completely. Sarah screamed when I told her. "Finally, I've been waiting for this since you first mentioned him." My colleagues at Goldman congratulated me. Claire Zhang took me to lunch and gave me relationship advice disguised as career mentoring. Daniel's family was thrilled. Margaret immediately started dropping hints about grandchildren, which Daniel deflected with practiced ease. The only people who didn't know were my parents, because they weren't part of my life anymore. And that should have been fine, should have felt like freedom. But as we started planning the wedding, I kept thinking about the empty spaces where parents of the bride should be. The father-daughter dance I wouldn't have, the mother who wouldn't help me choose a dress. I knew I was better off without them. I knew they'd forfeited any right to be part of my milestones. But grief is strange. You can mourn people who are still alive. You can miss the parents you deserved while despising the ones you actually got. Dr. Morrison helped me work through it. It's okay to feel sad about what you didn't have while also being relieved that they're gone. Both things can be true. "I don't want them at my wedding," I said firmly, "but I hate that I have to make that choice." "I know, but Amy, you're building something beautiful with Daniel. Don't let their absence diminish that. Focus on the family you're gaining, not the one you've lost." She was right. I was gaining the Morrisons, a real family who loved me, and I was marrying a man who saw me, truly saw me, and chose me anyway. That was worth more than any vindication from parents who'd never valued me. Wedding planning turned out to be both joyful and triggering in ways I hadn't anticipated. Every decision highlighted the absence of my birth family. Choosing a venue without my mother's input. Selecting a dress without her there to cry and say, I looked beautiful. Planning a guest list that conspicuously lacked 3 people who should have been at the center of it all. Daniel's mother tried to fill some of those gaps. She came dress shopping with me and Sarah, offering opinions but never pushing. When I found the dress, a simple but elegant Vera Wang in ivory silk. Margaret actually teared up. "You look absolutely stunning, sweetheart," she said. Sweetheart. She called me sweetheart like I was her own daughter. I hugged her tight, overwhelmed by gratitude and grief all tangled together. "Thank you for being here," I whispered. "Where else would I be?" She pulled back, smiling. "You're going to be my daughter soon. I wouldn't miss this for the world." My daughter, not my daughter-in-law, my daughter. I bought the dress and tried not to think about how my actual mother wouldn't even know what it looked like. We chose a venue in the Cotswolds, a restored castle estate with sprawling grounds and a chapel that looked like something from a period drama. Expensive, but I could afford expensive now. We booked it for June 15th, a year after Daniel's proposal. Guest list was easier than expected. Daniel had a large, loving family and dozens of friends. I had Sarah, a handful of close colleagues from Goldman, my design instructors from Central St. Martin's, and Mr. Bernard Ashworth, who'd become more of a father figure over the years than my actual father ever was. When I asked Bernard if he'd walk me down the aisle, he actually got misty-eyed. "Amy, I'd be honored, truly honored." "You've done more for me than Richard ever did," I said. "You protected me when no one else would. You deserve to be there." "Your grandmother would be so proud of who you've become," he said quietly. "I wish she could see this." "Me too." I sent out save the dates in December. 80 guests, a relatively intimate wedding by London standards. I checked the guest list 3 times to make sure I hadn't accidentally included my parents or Oliver. I hadn't. They didn't exist in this new life I was building. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received a message on Facebook from a name I hadn't seen in 6 years, Oliver Palmer. My hand shook as I opened it. "Amy, I saw your engagement announcement in the Financial Times. Daniel's architecture firm had been featured in an article about sustainable design, and they mentioned his upcoming marriage. Congratulations. I'm genuinely happy for you. I know we haven't spoken in years. I know there's a lot of history and hurt between us. But I'm reaching out because Mom and Dad are really struggling. Dad's health has deteriorated significantly. He's had 2 minor heart attacks in the last year. The medical bills are piling up. Mom is trying to care for him while working part-time. They're barely making ends meet. I'm not asking for me. I have my own life and career. But there are parents, Amy. They made mistakes, I'm not denying that. They favored me growing up, and that wasn't fair to you. But they're in their mid-60s now, sick and struggling, and I'm asking you to find it in your heart to help. Maybe invite them to the wedding? Show them you've forgiven them. It would mean the world to them to see you happy and successful. And maybe having some financial assistance, just a small monthly allowance, £5,000 or so, would ease their stress and potentially help Dad's health. I know it's a lot to ask, but we're family. That has to count for something. Please think about it." Oliver, I read the message 3 times, my emotions careening between fury, pity, and that old, familiar, desperate hope that maybe this time things could be different. Dad was sick. Genuinely sick, not just early retirement sick. They were struggling financially. Oliver was acknowledging, however minimally, that they'd been unfair to me. Part of me, the damaged child part that still wanted parental love, whispered, "This is your chance. Help them. Show you're the bigger person. Maybe they'll finally see your worth." But the adult part, the part that had spent years in therapy learning to recognize manipulation, was screaming warnings. I forwarded the message to Dr. Morrison and Daniel without responding to Oliver. Daniel called me immediately. "Are you okay?" "I don't know. Tell me what you see when you read this." "I see your brother using your father's illness as emotional leverage to extract money from you." His voice was gentle but firm. "I see a man who admits they favored him, which is a massive understatement, but frames it as mistakes rather than systematic abuse. I see someone asking you to give them money and access to your wedding as if those things are equivalent to forgiveness. But Dad is actually sick. Your father is 66 years old with heart problems. That's unfortunate, but it's not your responsibility. He has a pension, presumably some savings, and the NHS. The medical bills Oliver mentions are likely private care they can't actually afford but feel entitled to." I was quiet, absorbing this. "And Amy," Daniel continued, softer now, "even if they were destitute and dying, you still wouldn't owe them anything. They had 21 years to be parents. They chose to exploit you instead. Their current circumstances don't erase that. I know. Logically, I know. But emotionally, you're that 8-year-old girl who just wants her parents to love her." Tears spilled over. "Yes, I love you," he said. "Whatever you decide, I support you. But please, please don't let them hurt you again." I had an emergency session with Dr. Morrison the next day. She read Oliver's message carefully, then looked at me over her reading glasses. What do you want to do? I want to help, I admitted. I want to prove I'm not the cold, vindictive person they probably think I am. I want them to see I succeeded and I'm generous and I'm better than they are. And if you help, give them money, invite them to your wedding, what do you think will happen? I thought about it honestly. They'll take the money, maybe they'll be grateful temporarily, but they won't apologize for how they treated me. They won't acknowledge the damage they did. They'll just expect more. And when I can't or won't give more, they'll resent me again. That's probably accurate, Dr. Morrison said. People who have exploited you don't suddenly become grateful when you continue letting them exploit you. They just learn that the exploitation works. So I should say no. I can't tell you what to do, Amy, but I can ask, what would helping them actually give you? Would it give you the loving parents you deserved? Would it heal the trauma of your childhood? Would it make them see you differently? No, I whispered. No to all of that. Then what would it give you? The illusion that I'm a good person. You are a good person, Dr. Morrison said firmly. You donate hundreds of thousands to charity every year. You funded scholarships for students who remind you of yourself. You're kind to your colleagues, loyal to your friends, and loving to your fiancé and his family. You're good, Amy. Refusing to fund your abuser's retirement doesn't change that. I cried then, messy and cathartic. I just wanted them to love me, I sobbed. I wanted to be good enough. Oh, sweetheart, you were always good enough. They were the ones who failed, not you, never you. I spent 2 days drafting my response to Oliver. Version after version, each one trying to balance honesty with kindness, firmness with compassion. In the end, I sent this. Oliver, thank you for reaching out. I'm sorry to hear about Dad's health issues. Heart disease is serious, and I hope he's receiving proper medical care through the NHS. However, I won't be providing financial assistance or inviting Mom and Dad to my wedding. You say they made mistakes and favored you growing up. Let me be clearer about what actually happened. For 13 years, they controlled a trust fund worth millions that my grandmother left specifically for me. They spent over £2 million of MY money on your education and their lifestyle while I lived in a servant's room in my own house. They told me repeatedly that I was mediocre, worthless, and not worth investing in. They took my minimum wage paychecks when I was 16. They refused to fund my university education while spending £60,000 annually on yours. They didn't attend my graduation from LSE. That's not favoritism. That's systematic psychological and financial abuse. When I turned 21 and took control of my assets, I gave them 30 days to leave MY house. They tried to shame me publicly, calling me cruel and ungrateful. Now, 3 years later, they want access to my money again. Not because they love me or miss me or regret how they treated me, but because they're struggling financially. I'm not struggling financially because I worked incredibly hard despite every disadvantage they imposed. I earned my success. They spent my inheritance while telling me I'd never amount to anything. They were wrong. You had every advantage: private school, Oxford, Lincoln's Inn, parental support both emotional and financial. I had none of that, yet I'm the one they're asking for money. Do you see the irony? You're a qualified barrister earning a good salary. If Mom and Dad need financial support, you can provide it from the education they spent my money on. My wedding is for people who love and support me, people who believed in me, people who chose me. Mom and Dad had 26 years to be those people. They chose not to be. I wish Dad well with his health. I genuinely do. But I'm not responsible for their financial situation or their emotional well-being. They made their choices. These are the consequences. Please don't contact me again about this or anything else. I've built a good life without them. I intend to keep it that way. Amy, I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then immediately blocked Oliver on all platforms. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter. Clearer. I'd said what needed to be said. Set the boundary that needed setting. And now I could focus on my wedding, on marrying Daniel, on joining the Morrison family, on building the future I actually wanted. Daniel was waiting when I got home from work that evening. He'd cooked dinner, or attempted to. He was an architect, not a chef, and opened a bottle of good wine. "How are you feeling?" he asked as we ate slightly burnt pasta. "Free," I said. "Lighter, like I finally closed a door I should have closed years ago." "Good." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I don't deserve space in your head, Ames, not when we're about to start our life together." "I know, and I'm done giving them that space." I squeezed his hand. 3 weeks until the wedding. Are you nervous?" "Terrified," he admitted cheerfully. "Not about marrying you, that's the easy part, but about making a speech in front of 80 people without embarrassing myself." "Your speech could be, 'Amy is great, thanks for coming,' and I'd be happy." Noted, though Mum would kill me if I half-arsed my wedding speech. I smiled, thinking about Margaret and how she'd thrown herself into wedding planning with the enthusiasm of someone who'd waited years for Daniel to settle down. "Your family is wonderful," I said quietly. "They're your family too now, or they will be in 3 weeks." He paused. "Have I mentioned how proud I am of you? How you handled Oliver's message, how you've built this life despite everything. You're extraordinary, Amy Palmer." Soon to be Amy Morrison. Soon to be Amy Palmer Morrison, if that hyphenated monstrosity you insisted on is any indication. "I earned the Palmer name," I said. "I'm not giving it up." "I know, I love that about you." We finished dinner and curled up on the sofa discussing last-minute wedding details, seating charts and menu choices, and whether we really needed a string quartet or if a DJ would suffice. Normal couple things, happy things. Things I'd never imagined having when I was a lonely child in a servant's room, convinced I was unlovable. The week before the wedding, something unexpected happened. I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "From Victoria Palmer, please read." Every instinct screamed at me to delete it, but curiosity, or maybe that old, damaged hope, made me open it. "Amy, I know you said not to contact you. I know Oliver tried and you refused. I'm not asking for money or an invitation to your wedding. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know that I was wrong about everything. Your grandmother left everything to you because she saw something in you that I refused to see. She recognized your creativity, your spirit, your potential. She knew you needed freedom and resources to become who you were meant to be, and I resented you for it. I resented that she chose you over me. I resented that you reminded me of her, of the life I'd rejected, the creativity I'd suppressed, the freedom I'd never allowed myself. Every time I looked at you, I saw my own failures reflected back, so I tried to destroy what she saw in you. I told you that you were mediocre because I needed to believe I'd made the right choice in choosing academic respectability over artistic passion. I favored Oliver because he validated my choices. He was academic, ambitious, conventional. Everything I thought I was supposed to value. But you were never mediocre, Amy. You were always extraordinary. I was just too bitter and damaged to see it. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know an apology doesn't erase 26 years of damage. I know you've built a beautiful life without us and you're better off for it. But I needed you to know, you deserved better. You deserved parents who celebrated you, encouraged you, loved you unconditionally. You deserved to be seen. I'm sorry I couldn't be that parent. I'm sorry I let my resentment of my mother poison my relationship with you. I'm sorry for every cruel word, every dismissal, every way I made you feel small. You were never the problem. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know the truth. I hope you're happy. I hope your wedding is beautiful. I hope you have everything you deserve. And I'm genuinely sorry. Victoria, I read the email 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This was the apology I'd waited for my entire life. The acknowledgement that I wasn't the problem, that I deserved better, that they were wrong. It should have felt vindicating, healing, like closure. Instead, it just felt sad because an apology now didn't change the past. It didn't give me back the childhood I deserved. It didn't erase the years of believing I was worthless. It didn't undo the damage. It was too little, too late. I sat with the email for a long time, trying to decide what to feel. Finally, I forwarded it to Dr. Morrison with a note. "Is this real, or just another manipulation?" She called me within an hour. "It reads as genuine to me," she said carefully. "But Amy, even if it's completely sincere, you don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even a response." "I know, I waited so long for her to see me. And now she does, and it doesn't change anything." "That's grief," Dr. Morrison said gently. "Grief for the relationship you never had and never will have. It's okay to feel sad about that while still maintaining your boundaries." Should I respond? Only if you want to, not because you think you should or because she deserves it, but because it would give you something. Would responding give you anything? I thought about it honestly. "No," I said finally. "I don't think it would." She had 26 years to say these things. She waited until after I'd built a life without her. The apology is for her conscience, not for my healing. That's very insightful. So I just don't respond. If that's what feels right, yes. You can acknowledge her words privately, maybe even find some healing in knowing she finally sees the truth without re-engaging with her. Okay, yeah, that's what I'll do. I saved Victoria's email in a folder I'd probably never look at again, then closed my laptop. Daniel found me on the balcony an hour later, staring at the Thames, lost in thought. "Everything okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "My mother sent an apology email. His arms tightened. And it was probably genuine, and it doesn't change anything, and I'm not responding. Good. Am I terrible for not responding? She finally apologized. She finally saw me. Shouldn't that matter? Daniel turned me around to face him. Amy, imagine a scenario where someone hit you with their car, drove away, and then 20 years later sent you a letter saying, "Sorry I hit you, I was having a bad day." Would that apology heal the broken bones? Would it give you back the years you spent recovering? No. Exactly. Her apology is nice for her, it eases her guilt. But it doesn't repair the damage she did. You're not terrible for protecting yourself from people who hurt you, even if they apologize afterwards. I leaned into his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, soap and coffee and the subtle cologne he wore. 3 days until we get married, I said. 3 days until you're stuck with me forever. Best decision I ever made. He kissed the top of my head. Second best. The best decision was walking away from people who didn't deserve you. The wedding day arrived with perfect June weather, blue skies, warm sun, gentle breeze. The kind of day that felt like a blessing. I woke up in a suite at the Castle Estate, surrounded by Sarah, Daniel's sister Fiona, and 2 friends from Goldman. We had champagne and croissants for breakfast while a hair and makeup team transformed us all into polished versions of ourselves. Sarah caught my eye in the mirror. "How are you feeling?" "Good. Really good, actually." "Not sad about your parents not being here?" I told her about Victoria's email, about the apology and my decision not to respond. "I'm sad about what I didn't have," I said carefully, "but I'm not sad about what I do have. Today I'm marrying an incredible man and joining a family that actually loves me. That's enough." "More than enough," Sarah agreed. "You deserve this happiness, Ames." Margaret knocked and entered, carrying my dress. Her eyes were already misty. "Oh, Amy, you're going to be so beautiful." She helped me into the dress, the Vera Wang I'd chosen months ago, and fastened each tiny button down the back. When I turned to look in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like a bride, happy, glowing, loved. "Your grandmother would be so proud," Margaret whispered, and that's when I cried, careful tears that didn't ruin my makeup. "Thank you," I managed. "For everything, for welcoming me, for being here. Where else would I be?" She hugged me carefully. "You're my daughter now." Those words, "you're my daughter," meant more than any apology from Victoria ever could. An hour before the ceremony, there was a knock on the bridal suite door. One of the venue's security staff stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Palmer, I'm sorry to disturb you. There are 3 people at the front gate claiming to be your family. Richard Palmer, Victoria Palmer, and Oliver Palmer. They're demanding entry. They say they have a right to be here." My stomach dropped like a stone. Of course they showed up. The apology email had been genuine, but it hadn't been closure. It had been an opening gambit. Sarah stood immediately. "I'll handle this." "No," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "I will." "Amy, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. One last time, then it's done." I stood, checking my reflection. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect dress. I looked like success, like happiness, like everything they said I'd never be. Good. I wanted them to see exactly what they'd lost. "Let's go," I said to the security guard. Sarah grabbed my hand. "I'm coming with you." "Me too," Fiona said firmly. We walked through the castle and out to the front gates, me in my wedding dress, flanked by my maid of honor and soon-to-be sister-in-law. A united front. At the iron gate stood my parents and Oliver, dressed in formal wear like they'd actually expected to be invited. Mother looked older than I remembered, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her eyes. Father looked frail, leaning on a cane. Oliver just looked uncomfortable, like he knew this was a terrible idea but had been dragged along anyway. When Mother saw me, her face crumpled. "Amy," she breathed, "you look beautiful." I felt nothing. No surge of anger, no desperate hope for reconciliation, just nothing. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We came to see you get married," Father said. "You're our daughter, we should be here." "I'm not your daughter anymore, I haven't been for 6 years." "Don't say that," Mother pleaded. "We're family, we'll always be family." "No," I said clearly. "We're people who share DNA, that's all we've ever been." Victoria stepped closer to the gate, hands outstretched like she wanted to touch me. "I know I hurt you. The email I sent, I meant every word. I'm so sorry, Amy. Please let us be part of this day. Let us try to make it right." "You had 26 years to make it right," I said. "You chose not to every single day." "We made mistakes," Father started. "Stop calling it mistakes," I interrupted, my voice sharp now. "Mistakes are accidents. What you did was deliberate, systematic. You spent millions of my money on Oliver while I lived in a servant's room in my own house. You told an 8-year-old child she was worthless. You refused to fund my education while lavishing everything on him. Those weren't mistakes. Those were choices." Oliver spoke for the first time. Amy, we're not asking for money today. We just want to be part of your life again. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Now you want to be part of my life, when I'm successful, when I'm marrying into money, when there's something in it for you? That's not fair, Mother started. Fair? I cut her off. Let me tell you what's not fair. I worked myself half to death to get into LSE while you told me I was mediocre. I graduated first in my class while you didn't attend my ceremony. I became the youngest associate at Goldman Sachs while you claimed I'd be lucky to earn $30,000 a year. And now, when I'm finally happy, when I've built a life without you, you show up and demand to be included. We're your parents, Father said weakly. You deserve nothing, I said, voice like steel. You had a daughter who desperately wanted your love, who would have done anything to earn your approval, and you destroyed her. You took that sweet, hopeful child and convinced her she was worthless. Tears were streaming down Mother's face now. I know, and I'm so sorry. Your apology doesn't change the past. It doesn't give me back the childhood you stole. It doesn't heal the damage you did. I stepped closer to the gate, making sure they could see my face clearly. I want you to listen very carefully. Inside that castle is my real family, people who chose me, who believed in me, who celebrated my successes instead of resenting them. Daniel's parents have been more loving in 2 years than you were in 21. They are walking me down the aisle. They are sitting in the front row. They are family. Amy, please. Mother reached through the gate bars. I stepped back. You're not welcome here. Not today, not ever. I've built a beautiful life and you're not part of it. You gave up that right when you chose money over your daughter. We were wrong, Father said, and for the first time, his voice cracked with genuine emotion. We see that now. We were wrong about everything. You're extraordinary, Amy. We were just too blind to see it. I know I'm extraordinary, I said quietly. I don't need you to tell me that anymore. I figured it out myself, despite everything you did to convince me otherwise. Oliver pulled out his phone. Amy, at least let us see photos afterwards. Let us know how it goes. No, I said. This is the last time we're ever going to speak. After today, you're strangers. I'll think of you the way I think of anyone I used to know and no longer have any connection to, rarely and with indifference. Sarah squeezed my hand, reminding me I wasn't alone. Mother was openly sobbing now. Please don't do this. Please don't cut us out forever. We love you. You don't love me, I said, and finally, I felt the truth of it settle in my bones. You never did. You loved the idea of me being small and manageable and grateful. You loved having access to my money. You loved feeling superior by making me feel inferior, but you never loved me. I turned to the security guards. Please escort them off the property. If they return, call the police. As the guards moved forward, Father called out, You'll regret this. You'll die alone and miserable. I turned back, allowing myself one last look at the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I don't think so, I said. I've already lived through misery, the 21 years with you. Everything from here is happiness. I walked away, back toward the castle, toward my wedding, toward my future. Behind me, I could hear Mother's sobs, Father's angry protests, the guards firmly directing them to leave. I didn't look back. Sarah hugged me when we were out of sight. You okay? I'm perfect, I said and meant it. I'm finally free. I walked back into the bridal suite with my head high and my heart lighter than it had been in years. Sarah and Fiona flanked me like bodyguards, both of them radiating protective fury on my behalf. Are you sure you're okay? Fiona asked for the 3rd time. Because I can still go out there and throw hands if needed. I grew up with 2 brothers. I know how to fight. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. I'm sure. I'm actually better than okay. Margaret was waiting in the suite, worry creasing her face. Amy, sweetheart, the security team told me what happened. Are you all right? Do you need a moment? We can delay the ceremony. No, I said firmly. We're not delaying anything. They don't get to disrupt this day any more than they already have. Margaret pulled me into a hug, careful not to wrinkle my dress. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I'm so proud to call you my daughter. Those words, my daughter, settled something deep in my chest. I had a mother. Just not the one I'd been born to. 15 minutes later, I was standing in the corridor outside the chapel, arm linked through Bernard Ashworth's. He changed into a morning suit for the occasion and looked distinguished and a bit emotional. Ready? He asked gently. Through the chapel doors, I could hear the string quartet playing. Inside were 80 people who'd chosen to be here, who loved me, who wanted to witness this moment. Not one of them shared my DNA, and that was perfectly fine. I'm ready, I said. The doors opened. The music swelled into the wedding march, and I walked down the aisle on the arm of the man who'd protected me when my own father wouldn't, toward the man who'd chosen to love me completely. Daniel stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, his eyes locked on mine, and his face did that thing, that soft, odd expression that said I was the only person in the world who mattered to him. I'd spent 21 years being told I was mediocre, worthless, not worth investing in, and here was a man who looked at me like I was everything. When I reached the altar, Bernard placed my hand in Daniel's and whispered, "Be happy, Amy. You deserve all the happiness in the world." "Thank you," I whispered back, "for everything." He kissed my cheek and took his seat in the front row, next to Margaret and Ian, who were both already crying. The ceremony itself was beautiful and simple. We'd written our own vows. Daniel went first. "Amy," he began, voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "when I met you 2 years ago, I saw someone brilliant and driven and terrifyingly competent. I was attracted to that immediately. Who doesn't love a woman who can calculate compound interest in her head and look stunning while doing it?" Laughter rippled through the chapel. But as I got to know you, I saw something else. Someone who'd survived incredible pain and came out the other side not broken, but stronger. Someone who chose kindness even when the world had been cruel. Someone who built herself from the ground up and never lost her capacity to love. His voice cracked slightly. "You're the strongest person I know, Ames, and the gentlest, and the most deserving of every good thing. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you know you're loved, valued, and seen. I promise to be the family you deserved all along. I promise to choose you every day for the rest of our lives." I was crying now, tears streaming down my carefully made-up face. My turn. "Daniel," I started, then had to pause to collect myself. I spent most of my life believing I was unlovable, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me not worth caring about. And then I met you, and you just saw me, the real me. Not the Goldman Sachs associate, or the trust fund heiress, or the girl with the tragic backstory. Just me. I squeezed his hands. "You taught me what love actually looks like. Not control or manipulation or conditions. Just genuine, generous, unconditional love. You celebrate my successes instead of resenting them. You encourage my dreams instead of dismissing them. You make me feel safe in a way I never have before." My voice steadied. "I promise to love you with that same generosity. I promise to build a family with you, a real family based on choice and respect and genuine care. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. And I promise that our children, if we have them, will never doubt for 1 second that they're loved completely." The last promise made Daniel's eyes go misty. The efficient cleared his throat. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss your bride." And he did, to enthusiastic applause and cheering from our guests. We walked back down the aisle as Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, Amy Palmer Morrison, technically, because I'd earned my name and wasn't giving it up to an eruption of joy from people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. As we exited the chapel into the June sunshine, Daniel pulled me close. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Like I just married the love of my life and became part of the best family in the world," I said. "How are you feeling?" "Like the luckiest man alive." We kissed again, and somewhere in the distance I heard Fiona shout, "Get a room, you two?" Life was good. Better than good. Perfect. The reception was everything I dreamed of. Good food, good wine, good company, dancing and laughter and speeches that made people cry and laugh in equal measure. Bernard gave a toast that had everyone misty-eyed. I've known Amy since she was 8 years old, a small girl who just lost her grandmother and was about to face some very difficult years. I watched her survive circumstances that would have broken most people. I watched her work 3 times as hard as everyone around her and achieve 3 times as much. And today, I'm honored to witness her marry a man who sees what I've always seen: her strength, her brilliance, her enormous capacity for love. To Amy and Daniel, may you have all the happiness you both deserve. Sarah gave a speech that started funny and ended heartfelt. I met Amy when we were both working at a cafe, and she was the most intense 17-year-old I'd ever encountered. She worked like every shift was a life-or-death situation, saved every penny, and had this look in her eyes like she was running from something. Turns out, she was running toward something, toward this moment, this life, this happiness. Amy, you're living proof that we can survive our families and build better ones. I'm so glad you found Daniel and the Morrisons. You deserve them, and they deserve you. Ian, Daniel's father, gave a toast welcoming me into the family. When Danny first told us about Amy, he said she was brilliant and beautiful and completely out of his league. Laughter. He was right about all 3, but what he didn't mention was how kind she is, how generous, how she makes everyone around her want to be better. "Amy, we're not just gaining a daughter-in-law today, we're gaining a daughter. Welcome to the family, sweetheart." Margaret didn't give a formal speech, she was crying too hard, but she found me during dinner and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you for making my son so happy," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting us with your heart. Thank you for giving me the family I always wanted," I whispered back. During the dancing portion of the evening, the DJ called for the traditional father-daughter dance. There was a moment of awkward silence. Everyone knew I didn't have a father here. Then Bernard stood up and offered his hand. "May I have this honor?" I took his hand, tears already forming. "I'd love that." We danced to "What a Wonderful World," a song grandmother used to play in her studio, and Bernard said quietly, "Your grandmother would be so incredibly proud of you, Amy. Not just for your success, but for your character. You could have become bitter and cruel after everything you endured. Instead, you became kind and generous. That's the real achievement." "I had good examples," I said, looking at him. "People like you who protected me when no one else would." "You protected yourself, my dear. I just provided legal support." "You provided hope. You reminded me that not all adults were like my parents. That mattered more than you know." We finished the dance, and as the music ended, the entire reception gave us a standing ovation. I looked around at the faces of people who loved me: Daniel, the Morrisons, Sarah, my Goldman colleagues, my design teachers, friends I'd made over the years, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This was my family now. This was home. Late in the evening, after most of the guests had gone and only close family remained, Daniel and I snuck away to a quiet corner of the castle gardens. We sat on a stone bench overlooking the grounds, my head on his shoulder, both of us pleasantly exhausted. "Today was perfect," I said. "Even the part where your biological family showed up and tried to crash? Especially that part." I sat up to look at him. Because it gave me clarity. I used to wonder if I'd made the right choice cutting them off, if I was being too harsh, if I should have given them more chances. But seeing them today, seeing their entitlement and their manipulation, I know I made the right choice. You absolutely did. And I realized something else, I continued. I spent so long trying to prove I wasn't mediocre, trying to achieve enough that they'd have to acknowledge I was worth something. But I don't need their acknowledgement anymore. I know my worth. You know my worth. Everyone who matters knows. Daniel kissed my forehead. "You were never mediocre, Ames, not for 1 second of your life." "I know that now," I smiled. It only took 26 years and a lot of therapy. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "Want to know something?" Daniel asked eventually. "Always. The morning I proposed, my mom pulled me aside and said, 'That girl has survived things that would break most people. If she chooses to trust you with her heart, you protect it with your life.'" My eyes burned with fresh tears. "Your mother said that?" "She did, and I promised her I would." He turned to face me fully. "Amy Palmer Morrison, I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you know you're loved, that you're chosen, that you matter." "I already know," I whispered, "but I'll never get tired of hearing it." We kissed under the stars, and everything felt right, like all the pain and struggle and loneliness had been leading to this moment, to this person, to this life. Our honeymoon was 3 weeks in Greece, Santorini, Mykonos, Crete. White sand beaches and blue water and hotel rooms where we didn't have to think about work or family drama or anything except each other. One evening in Santorini, sitting on our hotel balcony watching the famous sunset, I opened my laptop to check emails, a habit Daniel was trying to break me of. There was one from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "Message from Oliver Palmer." My stomach clenched, but curiosity won. I opened it. "Amy, I know you said not to contact you. I'm hoping you'll make an exception to read this. Mum had a breakdown after your wedding, complete emotional collapse. She's been in psychiatric care for the last 2 weeks. The doctors say it's severe depression combined with unresolved guilt and grief. Dad's health has deteriorated further. The stress of everything has been too much for his heart. He's stable for now, but fragile. I'm not telling you this to manipulate you or to make you feel guilty. You made your boundaries clear, and I actually respect that. What they did to you was inexcusable. I benefited from that treatment my whole life, and I'm sorry I never stood up for you. I'm telling you this because, I don't know, maybe I just need you to know that your words had an impact." That confrontation at the wedding, it forced Mum to face what she did. She can't hide from it anymore, can't justify it anymore. She's finally seeing the damage she caused, and it's destroying her. I'm not asking you to forgive her or to reach out or to fix this. You don't owe her anything, I just thought you should know. For what it's worth, I saw the photos from your wedding on social media. Sarah's Instagram is public. You looked happy, genuinely, radiantly happy. Good for you, Amy. You deserve that. I hope you have a wonderful life. Oliver, I read it twice, then showed it to Daniel. He read it silently, then looked at me. How do you feel? Sad, I said honestly. Sad that she's suffering, even though she brought it on herself. Sad that it took a complete breakdown for her to face reality. Sad that this is how the story ends. Are you going to respond? I thought about it, really thought about it, then I closed the laptop. No, I said. I'm not, because Oliver was right. I don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness, not closure, not comfort in her suffering. She made her choices. This is the consequence. And while I'm sad about it, I'm not responsible for fixing it. Daniel pulled me close. That's very healthy. Thank you, therapy. We watched the rest of the sunset in silence, and I felt that same sense of peace I'd felt at the wedding. I'd done the right thing, set the boundaries I needed, protected myself in ways no one had protected child me, and now I could move forward without that weight. We returned from honeymoon to our flat in Canary Wharf and settled into married life. Work at Goldman continued to be demanding but rewarding. I was promoted to vice president at 28, just like Claire had predicted. The Kensington house continued generating substantial income as a luxury rental. I used the profits to fund more scholarships, donate to more charities, support causes that mattered to me. Daniel and I bought a weekend cottage in the Cotswolds, a small stone house with a garden where I could paint and he could sketch building designs and we could escape the London chaos. Life was good, full, rich in all the ways that mattered. And then, 18 months after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. I took the test in our bathroom on a Tuesday morning, staring at the positive result with a complicated tangle of emotions. Joy, because Daniel and I had been hoping for this. Terror, because I was about to become someone's mother, and my only reference point for motherhood was Victoria. When I told Daniel that evening, he picked me up and spun me around, both of us laughing and crying. We're having a baby, he kept repeating. We're going to be parents. I don't know how to be a mother, I confessed. What if I'm terrible at it? He set me down gently, hands on my shoulders. Amy, you know exactly how not to be a mother. You spent 21 years learning everything a parent shouldn't do. You're going to be amazing because you know what damage looks like and you'll never inflict it. You really think so? I know so. Pregnancy was harder than I expected, physically and emotionally. Every doctor's appointment, every milestone, every moment of preparation reminded me that my own mother wasn't there. Wouldn't be there, would never meet her grandchild. Margaret stepped in, as she always did. She came to appointments with me when Daniel couldn't. She helped decorate the nursery. She shared stories about raising Daniel and his siblings, making it all seem manageable. You're going to be a wonderful mother, she told me one afternoon as we assembled a crib in what would be the baby's room. You have so much love to give. This child is going to be so lucky. I'm terrified I'll mess it up. Every parent is terrified. The difference is you care enough to worry. Victoria never worried because she never saw you as a separate person with needs. You won't make that mistake. I hoped she was right. Our daughter was born on a snowy December morning. 7 pounds, 5 ounces, with Daniel's blue eyes and a surprisingly full head of dark hair. We named her Vivienne Margaret Morrison, Vivienne for my grandmother, Margaret for Daniel's mother. The moment they placed her in my arms, something inside me broke open and rebuilt itself simultaneously. I looked down at this tiny, perfect person who depended on me completely, and I made her a silent promise. I will never make you feel unworthy. I will never compare you to anyone else. I will never use your love as a bargaining chip. I will celebrate you, support you, and see you for exactly who you are. You will never doubt that you're wanted and loved. You will have the childhood I deserved. Daniel wrapped his arms around both of us, the three of us forming our own little family unit. She's perfect, he whispered. She really is. Margaret arrived an hour later and cried when she held her namesake. Oh, she's beautiful, just beautiful. Ian stood beside his wife, equally misty-eyed. Congratulations, you two. Welcome to parenthood. Sarah came the next day with flowers and a card that said, to the world's best mum, yes, you. Bernard sent a beautiful silver rattle engraved with Vivienne's initials and a note. Your grandmother would be so proud. You've broken the cycle. I had. I'd survived my family, built my own, and was now giving my daughter everything I'd never had. It felt like the truest victory. 6 months after Vivienne was born, I received one final letter. It arrived by registered post from a solicitor's office I didn't recognize. Inside was a short note from Oliver. Amy, I'm writing to inform you that our mother, Victoria Palmer, passed away 3 weeks ago. The cause was heart failure, though the doctor suggested it was as much emotional as physical. Dad is still alive but in poor health. He's moved to a care facility. Mum left a letter for you. I'm enclosing it. I haven't read it. She specifically said it was for you alone. You don't owe her anything, even in death. If you want to throw this away unread, I'd understand. Oliver, I stood in our kitchen, holding the envelope, hands shaking. Victoria was dead, my mother, biological mother, was gone, and I felt almost nothing. A distant sadness, like hearing about a stranger's passing, but no grief, no regret. She'd been dead to me for 7 years already. Daniel found me still standing there 20 minutes later. What's wrong? My mother died. Victoria, she's gone. He took the letter from my hands, read Oliver's note. I'm sorry, Ames. I'm not sure I am, I admitted. Is that terrible? No, it's honest. There's a letter from her. Do you think I should read it? Only if you want to. You don't owe her your attention, even now. I looked at the sealed envelope, Victoria's handwriting on the front, for Amy. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to refuse her this final communication. But part of me needed closure. Needed to know if she had any final words that mattered. I opened it. Dearest Amy, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Perhaps that's fitting. I was never really present in your life anyway, even when I was alive. The doctors tell me my heart is failing. They use medical terms, but I know the truth. I'm dying of guilt and regret, of the weight of what I did to you. After your wedding, after you walked away from us at those gates, something in me shattered. I couldn't hide from it anymore, from the truth of how badly I'd failed you, how I'd let my own damage poison our relationship beyond repair. I've spent the last 18 months in therapy, finally confronting what I did. Finally admitting that I destroyed my daughter because I couldn't handle my own mother's rejection of me. I wanted to write to apologize, but Oliver told me you blocked all contact. And honestly, what could I say that would matter? Sorry doesn't give you back the childhood I stole. It doesn't erase the damage. So instead, I'm writing this final letter to tell you what I should have said every day of your life. You were never mediocre. You were extraordinary from the moment you were born, creative, perceptive, resilient. Everything I wished I could be but was too afraid to become. I was jealous of you, Amy. Jealous of my own daughter, because you had my mother's love in a way I never did. Because you had talent I'd suppressed in myself. Because you had the courage to be authentic in a way I never managed. I tried to destroy what I envied. And I did destroy it, our relationship, your trust, your childhood sense of security, but I didn't destroy you. You survived me, you thrived despite me. You became everything I said you couldn't be, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to witness it properly. I saw the photos from your wedding. You looked radiant, happy, free, exactly how a bride should look. I'm told you have a daughter now. Vivienne, named for my mother. Part of me hopes you'll tell her about her grandmother, not me, the woman who failed you, but Vivienne, the woman who saw your worth. I hope you're a better mother than I was. I know you will be because you know what damage looks like. You'll never inflict it. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, having done nothing to help you succeed. But I am. You're extraordinary, Amy. You always were. I love you. I don't think I ever told you that, not properly. But I did. I do, I just didn't know how to show it in any way that mattered. I'm sorry, for everything. Mum, I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This was everything I'd wanted to hear as a child. The acknowledgement, the apology, the admission that I was never the problem, and it came too late to change anything. Daniel held me while I cried, not for the mother I'd lost, but for the mother I'd never had, for the relationship that could have been but never was. What are you going to do? He asked when I'd calmed down. I looked at the letter, then at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. I'm going to keep it, I said. Not because I forgive her, but because someday Vivienne might ask about her grandmother. And I want to be honest that Victoria was damaged and did terrible things, but in the end she at least saw the truth. That counts for something. And the funeral? Oliver didn't mention details, but presumably there'll be one. I thought about it. No, I'm not going. She was gone from my life 7 years ago. I said my goodbyes then. Okay. Is that cold? It's self-preservation. There's a difference. I didn't go to Victoria's funeral, didn't send flowers or a card or any acknowledgement. I simply filed her letter away with grandmother Vivienne's letters, 2 very different women who'd both shaped my life, one through love and one through its absence. And then I focused on what mattered. My daughter, my husband, my life. I went back to work 3 months after Vivienne was born, having negotiated flexible hours with Goldman. Claire was supportive. Family first, Palmer, will work around it. The Morrisons helped with childcare. Margaret was delighted to babysit her granddaughter whenever needed. Sarah became Auntie Sarah and took her role seriously, showering Vivienne with gifts and attention. Life settled into a new rhythm. Work and motherhood and marriage, and the constant juggling act of trying to do all of it well. Vivienne grew from a tiny infant into a curious toddler. She had Daniel's smile and my determination and an absolutely fearless approach to life that both delighted and terrified us. On her first birthday, I took her to the Kensington house, my house, grandmother's house, for the first time. We walked through rooms that had been professionally decorated for rental guests, nothing like the house I'd grown up in. But grandmother's studio was still there, preserved exactly as she'd left it. I sat on the floor with Vivienne in my lap and told her about her great-grandmother. She was a designer, I said, showing her some of the old sketches. She made beautiful clothes. She was brave and talented, and she loved you before you were even born. Vivienne grabbed at the papers with chubby hands, babbling happily. She left me this house and lots of money so I could be free, I continued, even though she was too young to understand. And because of her, you'll never have to worry about money or security. You'll have freedom to become whoever you want to be. I pulled out one of grandmother's letters, the one for age 21, and read my favorite part aloud. The best revenge is not destruction. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so fulfilled that they become irrelevant to your story. I looked at my daughter, this perfect little person who would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. That's what I did, Vivi. I became happy, and you're part of that happiness. She reached up and patted my face with sticky hands, and I laughed. This was enough. This was everything. People ask me sometimes if I regret cutting off my family, if I ever wonder what might have happened if I'd given them another chance, if I feel guilty about Victoria's death or my father living out his final years in a care facility without me. The answer is no, no regret, no guilt, no wondering. I gave them 21 years to be parents. They chose not to be. I gave them a clean exit when I turned 21. All they had to do was leave me alone. They chose to keep asking for more. I made my choice. I chose myself. I chose freedom. I chose happiness. And I've never looked back. My story isn't about the family that betrayed me. It's about the family I built. Daniel, Vivienne, the Morrisons, Sarah, Bernard, all the people who chose to love me without conditions. It's about surviving trauma and refusing to let it define you. It's about breaking cycles and building something better. It's about understanding that blood doesn't make family, choice does. Love does, respect does. I'm Amy Palmer Morrison. I'm 30 years old. I'm a managing director at Goldman Sachs. I'm a wife, a mother, a daughter to the people who earned that title. I'm happy. And I built it all myself from the ashes of a childhood that tried to destroy me. That's not revenge. That's victory. 5 years later, Vivienne is 6 years old and starting primary school. She's bright and creative and confident in a way I never was at her age. Last week, she came home with a family tree assignment. "Mummy," she said, spreading out the paper on our kitchen table, "I need to fill in all the grandparents. I have Granny Margaret and Grandpa Ian, but what about your parents?" Daniel and I exchanged a look. We'd always known this conversation would come eventually. I knelt down to her level. "My parents aren't in our lives, sweetheart. They weren't very kind to me when I was growing up, so I decided not to see them anymore." Her eyes went wide. "They were mean to you?" "Yes, they made me feel like I wasn't important. And when grown-ups do that, even if they're your parents, it's okay to choose not to be around them anymore." She processed this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old can muster. "Are they dead?" "One of them is. My mum died a few years ago." "My dad is still alive but very old and sick. Do you miss them?" I thought about how to answer honestly but age-appropriately. "I miss the parents I wish I'd had," I said carefully. "I miss the idea of a mum and dad who loved me, but the actual people, no, I don't miss them because they hurt me too much." Vivienne hugged me suddenly, fiercely. "I'm sorry they were mean to you, Mummy. That's not fair." I hugged her back, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "You know what though, Vivi? Because they were mean, I learned exactly how not to be a parent, and that makes me better at being your mum." "You're the best mum," she said loyally, "and you're the best daughter. Now for your family tree, we can put great-grandmother Vivienne, who you're named after. She was wonderful, and she loved you even before you were born." "Really? Really? She left me money and a house and letters telling me to be strong, and all of that helped me survive until I could have you. So in a way, she helped create." Vivienne smiled. "I like great-grandmother Vivienne." "Me too, baby, me too." We filled in the family tree together, the Morrisons on Daniel's side, grandmother Vivienne on mine, and blank spaces where Richard and Victoria should have been. Those blank spaces didn't feel like loss anymore. They felt like freedom. That night, after Vivienne was asleep, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked up Oliver Palmer on LinkedIn. He was still a solicitor, mid-level at a decent firm. Married now, with 2 children according to his sparse Facebook profile I found through a Google search. I wondered if he ever thought about me, if he told his children about their aunt who'd cut off the family, if he'd learned anything from watching our family implode. I wondered, but I didn't care enough to find out. I closed the browser and deleted my search history. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I walked into Vivienne's room and watched her sleep, her chest rising and falling peacefully. She would never know what it felt like to be the unfavored child, to be told she was mediocre, to question her worth. She would grow up knowing she was loved unconditionally. That was my gift to her, the childhood I'd never had. Daniel appeared behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She really is. You know what else is perfect? Us, this life, everything we've built." I leaned back into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. He was right. This life, the one I'd built from nothing, from pain, from sheer determination to be better than the people who tried to break me, was perfect. Not because it was easy or without complications, but because it was mine. Chosen, earned, built with love instead of obligation. I'd started with nothing but a trust fund I couldn't access and a grandmother's letters telling me to survive. And I'd built this, a career I loved. A husband who cherished me, a daughter who would never doubt her worth, a family who chose me. That was more than enough. That was everything.